Chapter 1332. Li Zhongjiu's nickname Evil Lord. It had already spread out in the fallen city. Now everyone knew that this mysterious senior was called Evil Lord. It didn't matter what his real name was, as long as they knew that it was Evil Lord who saved them. At the same time, the glorious achievements of the Great Yin Kingdom had gradually spread out and made people familiar with them. They all knew that the Great Yin Kingdom was the real warrior. To be able to fight alongside such a person would be an incomparably glorious thing. Although there were only 600,000 troops stationed there. Later, the 5 countries pooled together again and made the garrison up to 800,000 troops. The 800,000 troops were stationed in the fallen city. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran came to the city wall. The soldiers of the 5 countries knew that it was because of these 2 people that their homeland was saved. So they were also incomparably respectful to Evil Lord. And this Evil Lord's wife. This time, the Beast God Temple sent out the so-called Plague Army. They have at least 7 million troops, and possibly 8 million troops. Jiang Bai reported on the city wall. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran had arranged a lot of formations around the city. At the same time, they had also refined some elixirs in the past 2 days. Then, they mixed the elixirs into the water and let the soldiers drink it. As a result, these soldiers who had never eaten elixirs had a great improvement rapidly. Each of them had at least 2 to 3 levels of breakthrough. It directly increased the combat strength of all the soldiers by 2 times. Even Jiang Bai and the others had a small breakthrough. If 1 or 2 people had a breakthrough, it would only have a small effect. But when 800,000 soldiers had a breakthrough at the same time, one could imagine how terrifying the effect would be. Who could imagine such a situation? When they were stacked together, it would also be an extremely terrifying effect. Among them, there are more than 20 generals of the primitive emperor realm. Jiang Bai said, the strongest one is the Plague Army General. This person is also the leader of the Plague Army, and the life snatchers under his command are all fierce. Jiang Bai said, and then looked at Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yanran. He wanted to see what the 2 of them thought about the current situation. What kind of bullshit names are these? Did you guys give it that name? Who knew that Li Zhongjiu would directly say such a sentence? As if he had grasped the main point of the word plague. Was such a name more frightening? No, they announced it themselves. Jiang Bai said, although the fallen race were all half-beastmen, the higher their strength, the closer they were to humans. These fallen race even believed that they must replace the weak human race, and that they themselves were the true superior race. His strength was the strongest, and he had nothing to fear. Alright, these people are definitely not well educated. Li Zhongjiu said, other than the Plague General, there is also the Death General, who is stronger than the Plague General. Chu Yan said, back then, these 2 people were defeated by my father. At this point, Chu Yanguan's mouth could not help but curl up into a proud smile. His father's achievements back then were also incomparably glorious. If it wasn't for the Great Yin Kingdom's full strength, how could the current situation be like this? The Beast God Temple was worried that the other countries had similar strength to the Great Yin Kingdom. If all of them were so fierce, the Beast God Temple wouldn't be able to hold on. Moreover, the Beast God Temple also needed time to repair the teleportation formation. The subsequent battles gradually slowed down. Compared to the other countries, it was still an era of peace, but this was all in exchange for the lives of the experts of the Great Yin Kingdom. This battle is also for the heroic spirits of the Great Yin Kingdom. Jiang Bai and the others learned about the Great Yin Kingdom's achievements from Chu Yanguan. They also knew about the contributions made by the Great Yin Kingdom, and they were really impressed. In the beginning, the Beast God Temple had a troop called Tian Sha. These 2 people are only at the bottom of the Tian Sha, Chu Yanguan said. Tian Sha. Li Zhongjiu heard the name, and guessed that it must have some background. The Tian Sha are all Supreme Being experts. Our Great Yin Kingdom was destroyed by the Tian Sha. Of course, the Tian Sha was also severely injured in that battle. Oh, that means the Tian Sha is their main strength. As long as we destroy the Tian Sha, we will also break their teeth. Li Zhongjiu nodded and said. He exchanged a look with Qi Yanran. Obviously, he meant that when he had the time, he would directly destroy this thing called Tian Sha. If that was the case, there were indeed many experts in the Beast God Temple. The Dark Hall had two major organizations. Now the Beast God Temple actually had a Tian Sha. Generally speaking, such an organization would also have seats for elders and deacons, and the number should be about half of the Tian Sha. If the strength of the Tian Sha was amplified by 5 times, it would be the strength of the Beast God Temple. A single Tian Sha was able to destroy the Great Yin Kingdom. If all the big countries had joined forces, they might not have lost. Li Zhongjiu also shared his analysis. In fact, the human race did have the strength. But who knew that they would be involved in such a situation? It simply made people feel helpless, and even infuriated. These people were too disappointing. Hearing Li Zhongjiu's analysis, everyone gnashed their teeth in hatred. These people one day Jiangbai will wring their heads off. Jiangbai had a bad temper. He was simply angered to death by these people. The rest of the people felt the same. Destroying the Tian Sha was easy to say. The Great Yin Kingdom had hundreds of Supreme Being experts, but they could only severely injure the Tian Sha. From this, one could see the strength of the Tian Sha. It's coming, Qi Yinran said. There was a blue bird flying back quickly. In the blink of an eye, it landed on Qi Yinran's shoulder. When Xu Yan saw Qi Yinran's bird, he was very curious. Where did this bird come from? And it seemed to be very smart. When Qi Yinran's voice faded away, the entire fallen city shook violently. Rumble! Even the walls were on the verge of shattering from the vibrations. Everyone could not help but clench the weapons in their hands, staring at the situation in front of them. Finally, a black mass appeared like a black tsunami. At a glance, it was boundless and endless. Countless giant beasts of the fallen race also appeared at this moment. The gluttony at the forefront. The destructive behemoth was pulling a destructive war chariot that weighed hundreds of tons. The bladed beasts were covered with sharp horns all over their bodies. With a slight touch, the city would be easily broken into 2 halves. In front of such a lineup, no one could resist at all. It was really too terrifying. Is this the plague army? Some of the soldiers on the city wall could clearly feel that there were mountains crushing down on them one after another. They were about to fall on them and crush them into pieces. Under such circumstances, they could not breathe at all. So scary. In comparison, the human race was simply too insignificant. They weren't even enough to be stepped on by the troops in front of them. Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran's eyes were slightly solemn. Because there were so many people in front of them, they did not know if it would work or not. They were also looking forward to the effect of this array. Attack! General Pestilence, who was hiding behind the army, stood on the head of a giant beast and looked down on the fallen city, which looked as fragile as a pile of tofu. Immediately, the Plague Army began to madly rush toward fallen city. As for Plague General and Death General, they were chatting freely at the back of the army. Have you heard? A few days ago, that idiot from the assassination palace, Xuemye from the Flying Scales troop, returned to his own assassination palace and started to kill people crazily. Then he self-detonated and killed their own manager. Plague General said, "There is such a thing. The content is very interesting." The Death General was a young man with a pale face. His face looked like it was covered with flour, but you couldn't dig out the flour. The Sky Fiend and the Dark Hall were the 2 major components of the Beast God Temple. Above the 2 major organizations were the Elders. Although Plague General and Death General were at the bottom of the hierarchy in the Sky Fiend, it was not a big deal to talk about something like Xuemye. Most importantly, this matter was too exciting. No one thought that these people could do such a thing. It was really amazing. How could this be? Are they being controlled by someone? It is possible. But I also heard that Xuemye and the others might have encountered an array master. That is why they are in such a situation. Array master? Aren't those things all dead? Death General said in surprise. Just as Death General's voice fell, there was a loud bang on the ground in front of them. It was as if a fireball had fallen from the sky. More than a dozen huge flaming birds appeared in the air. At the same time, they spat out extremely fierce flames. Moreover, the Plague Army's footsteps became extremely slow. Their movements were extremely slow, as if they had stepped into a deep quagmire. Chapter 1333. In just a few minutes, the plague army suffered heavy casualties. Before these half-beastmen could see what was going on, they were dragged to the ground, as if they had been grabbed by a water ghost. They couldn't move at all. Then a series of attacks fell from the sky. The terrifying flames instantly burned the half-beastmen to ashes. Boom! Boom! The power of the flames instantly attacked. In the blink of an eye, the plague army was engulfed by the flames. The scene in front of them was indescribable. When Jiang Bai and the rest saw this scene from the top of the city wall, their hearts were filled with shock. Everywhere their eyes passed, flames would burn. Moreover, the power of the flames was quite strong. The half-beastman army was unable to resist for long before they were turned into ashes. There were at least 800,000 soldiers who rushed up. And these 800,000 soldiers were specially used to attack the city. At this moment, more than half of them were engulfed in the sea of flames. Array! The expressions of the Death General and the Plague General changed. Array formations were the most troublesome thing for them. When they fought with array masters in the past, they sent a large number of assassins to assassinate the array masters. Only then did they manage to kill more than half of the array masters, and the rest didn't dare to appear again. Now such a powerful array had appeared. There must be an array master behind it. Interesting. Second Legion charge. General Pestilence sneered. Although the formation was powerful, its power was limited. Moreover, there would always be loopholes in its operation speed. With so many soldiers rushing forward, they would be able to reach the city walls by stepping on the corpses in front of them. As long as they reached the city wall, they could kill their way into the city and destroy it. It wouldn't be a problem at all. Furthermore, this formation of yours isn't limitless. There will be a day when it will be exhausted, and there will also be a day when it will be broken. This was because they were rather clumsy when it came to this array formation, and they had no idea how to break it. More tremors came, and then the endless orc army rushed up again. Rumble! There was another series of tremors. When the soldiers on the city wall saw the orcs swarming over, they were shocked again. However, there was an array set up by Evil Lord. These orcs couldn't rush to the front. What a powerful array! When the Second Legion was about to be completely annihilated, they still couldn't even touch the wall. This time General Pestilence was completely shocked. After all, at least 1.5 million soldiers were killed in these two legions. Just like that, they were sacrificed heroically. They didn't even have the time to touch the enemy's walls. Such a scene was quite terrifying in their eyes. Damn it! Send out all the Yuan King level legions and kill them. I don't believe that we can't break these arrays. At this moment, in front of the fallen city, there were no other traces except for many deep pits. The orc soldiers in front of them were directly burned, and not even a trace of smell was left. It was very shocking that this array was so simple. If this array was careless, it would directly burn its own people to death. Wouldn't it be quite dangerous? However, at least these enemies were burned to death. They were suddenly excited. There were 4 city walls in the fallen city. The Plague General didn't care about them. He directly mobilized all the orc soldiers and attacked from all directions at the same time. Rumble! Originally, General Pestilence thought that Li Zongjiu and the others were only able to set up such a trap in this place. How could he have known that the entire fallen city was covered by this formation? Li Zongjiu and the others' cultivation of array was not simple. At this moment, it was quite brilliant and dazzling. The half-beastmen in front of him were burned to the point that they didn't have the slightest bit of temper. Because of the formation, the half-beastmen had no way to eat it. At the very most, the strength of the frontmost troops was considered to be quite good. However, these people were still annihilated before they could reach the city gate. If they were not mistaken, the troops that wanted to launch a surprise attack just now were all Yuan King level cultivators. But who knew that he would lose his life in such a situation? Under the protection of these people, a figure finally touched the city wall of the fallen city with his finger. Then, he disappeared directly and was burned to ashes by the Nirvana Skyfire array. Seems like this array is quite effective. Li Zongjiu also didn't expect this array to be so useful. Qi Yanran was also very happy. Being able to set up an effective array was a very exciting thing for her. At least it proved that Qi Yinran's inheritance was quite useful. In fact, the array had already shown its power when they were in Suishan City. However, Li Zhongjiu and the others didn't know that if it wasn't for the existence of this defensive array, the entire Suishan City would have been wiped out. Let's go and capture those two guys. Let's go, Li Zhongjiu said. Since the city was fine, Li Zhongjiu decided to capture the other side's leader first. Moreover, Li Zhongjiu had heard that this fellow was a heaven Sha, so he wanted to know what a heaven Sha was. Although these two people were at the bottom of the sky demons, they should more or less know some of the secrets of the sky demons. Okay. Then, Qi Yinran followed Li Zhongjiu and left the fallen city. Although Jiang Bai and the others were nervous, they were confident in Li Zhongjiu and Li Zhongjiu. At least, they should be able to put up a fight against the two of them. If they could not defeat them, they could escape and at least buy some time in this formation. After the other party lost nearly 3 million orcs, they completely gave up the attack. At this moment, even if they continued to attack, it might not be effective. Instead of sacrificing in vain, it was better to stabilize the situation first. Just when the Plague General and the Death General were discussing countermeasures, suddenly, they saw two figures flying directly out of the fallen city. Moreover, the orcs below were very excited. They couldn't wait to rush into the sky and capture the two people. Immediately, the two people's eyes lit up. They were just discussing how to attack the city, but now there were two people rushing out and falling into the trap. Obviously, these people were indeed too confident. They thought that with a little array, they could be invincible. They didn't even put the two people in their eyes. Usually, if this was the case, big trouble would happen. Haha, did you see that? These humans are often so arrogant. Two of them came, one for each of us. Don't kill them. I want to catch them and interrogate them. The Plague General said. Don't worry, none of them can escape. I'm still very confident in dealing with these two weak humans. The Death General smiled cruelly. When he laughed, the corners of his mouth stretched all the way to his ears, and a long white bone blade appeared in his hand. He leaped directly toward Qi Yinran to kill her. Little girl, I'll let you taste my treasured knife. Qi Yinran's eyes flashed with a cold light. Leave him to me, Qi Yinran said. Just beat them until they are disabled. I want to read their memories, Li Zhongjiu said. When the time came, he could combine the two people's memories to accurately find the information about the sky demons. Naturally, the more comprehensive the better. All right, Qi Yinran said. The desolate heaven essence in her hand suddenly surged out and wrapped around the Death General's body. The Death General's bone knife suddenly slashed at the desolate heaven essence. However, with a clang, the saber in his hand broke into two halves. What? The Death General had killed countless human experts, but he had never encountered such a situation. The knife in his hand had cut off the heads of countless human experts, but now it was broken. What's going on? The next moment, Qi Yinran grabbed the Death General and threw him to the ground. Pung! He smashed a big hole in the ground. Suddenly, the scene was filled with sand and stones. It was extremely heroic. The Plague General frowned because in his opinion, the Death General seemed to be playing a game with the other party. That was why he was in such a sorry state and did not treat the enemy seriously. He needed to be properly criticized. Die! The Plague General held a large steel fork in his hand. There was a poisonous snake coiling around the steel fork. The snake had a total of 3 heads, and the 3 heads immediately coiled around the sharp point of the steel fork. Swoosh! As the steel fork was waved, the poisonous snake bit at Li Zhongjiu's neck. The unparalleled sword appeared in his hand. The blazing sword aura directly cut off the head of the poisonous snake. Crash! What? Chapter 1334. The unparalleled sword instantly slashed towards the opponent. However, the Plague General was not weak either. He was probably a second-grade supreme martial artist. Although his strength was not bad, it was still not enough in front of Li Zhongjiu. Clang! 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 The battle between the 4 experts instantly caused extremely terrifying fluctuations. The destruction caused by the battle was even more powerful than the formation just now. The Beastman army below was also in a state of confusion. You guys can fight if you want. But why do you have to slash at the square formation below from time to time? Don't go overboard, okay? Another large number of casualties, especially Li Zhongjiu, in such a battle, also completely unleashed his nature. The unparalleled sword in his hand seemed to turn into a sea of fire when he waved it. As it spun around him, the sea of fire also surged instantly. It was enough to see such a situation. Rumble. Another army was almost completely wiped out by Li Zhongjiu's sword aura. Seeing this scene, the plague general could no longer hold back. You're courting death. Today I'll definitely destroy you. These subordinates were trained by him. And more or less, they were existences that could help him establish his position. Therefore, in terms of numbers, he naturally could not lose too many of them. If he lost them directly, he would become a commander. At that time, wouldn't he become a general without an army? If he lost his power in the Beast God Temple, it would be a very terrifying thing. If he was careless, someone would directly devour him, the kind that wouldn't even spit out his bones. In order to protect his troops, the Pestilence General finally revealed his trump card. Transform. Boom. Suddenly, a large cloud of poisonous gas gushed out from the ground. In this huge cloud of poisonous gas, a fierce force could be seen constantly being released. Then, a three-headed giant python that was about 30 meters in size appeared on the spot. So it's a snake. I was wondering why it was so weird. Li Zhongjiu stood in the air. He was waiting for these people to transform. Before they transformed, these people's strength was simply not enough to be looked at. After they transformed, their strength increased by at least 5 grades. It was equivalent to a 7th grade supreme martial artist. Even the weakest of them are able to reach rank 7 utmost exalted, or even rank 8 utmost exalted. Li Zhongjiu was shocked when he saw the aura released by the plague general. It seemed that this sky fiend was very difficult to deal with. However, this also showed how terrifying the strength of the Great Yin Empire was. Otherwise, the people of the 5 nations of the Holy Mountain wouldn't be so afraid of it. These people might have secretly cooperated with the beastmen. The other battlefield also shook violently. Then a terrifying aura was released. It was also close to the aura of a 6th grade sovereign. When he took a closer look, it turned out to be a giant scorpion. A nest of snakes and scorpions. You people are already so ugly, yet you still want to grow so big. Li Zhongjiu could not help but shake his head. Aren't you here to scare people? You're really too shameless. If it was someone with a lower mental state, they would probably vomit after seeing your attitude. You're about to die, yet you still talk so much nonsense. Give me your life. The plague general roared and directly leaped toward Li Zhongjiu. At the same time, a black poisonous light was brewing in his mouth, ready to be shot out at any time. When Jiangbai, Chu Yan, and the others on the city wall saw this, they were especially worried. Because once these people transformed, their strength would definitely increase greatly. Just now, when they were dealing with the situation before the transformation, they only had a slight advantage. Now that the other party had completely transformed, wouldn't they become even more terrifying? The answer was soon revealed. Li Zhongjiu gently waved the unparalleled sword in his hand twice, and cut off the 2 heads of the poisonous snake. Only the middle head was left. Then he landed on the ground. He cut off the tail with the sword. Li Zhongjiu's figure disappeared again. When he reappeared, he was already behind the plague general. He stabbed in and directly cut off the plague general's spine. Bang! The few bones were directly cut off by Li Zhongjiu. Obviously he had transformed, but why was he still so weak? Even compared to his previous strength, it seemed that he was no match for Li Zhongjiu. After transforming, he directly fell to the ground in just 5 seconds. After crushing a large number of half-beastmen soldiers, the remaining half-beastmen soldiers quickly retreated. Even their commander had been defeated. What was the point of fighting then? Run, the general is dead. Although the half-beastmen looked stupid and naive, they were actually very clever. Once they saw that the situation was bad, they would immediately start to run. When they ran, they didn't have any emotions at all. Even if the commander had fallen straight down in front of him, he would never reach out to help him up. It would be better for him to escape first. Otherwise, wouldn't it delay their escape? On the other side, The scorpion demon was directly thrown to the ground by Qi Yinran in less than 7 seconds. He even almost spat out his internal organs. The main thing was that when he fell to the ground, he was accidentally stung by his own tail. Fortunately, he had some resistance to poison. Otherwise, he would have died in an instant from that attack. Bang! The Death General was also directly put to the ground. When the people in the fallen city saw this scene, they couldn't believe their eyes at all. They looked at each other. They felt that the couple just now was acting in front of hundreds of thousands of people. They could have killed them directly, but now they wanted to let them show off first, and then kill them. It really felt a little murderous. This made the two generals of the fallen race suffer a great blow. They felt as if they were in a dream. While they were dreaming, they were put on a handcart and pulled into the fallen city. Then all their limbs were cut off and tied up by dozens of chains. They were captured. When the plague general opened his eyes, this was his first thought. But there was good news. That was the Death General beside him was also captured. At least he had a companion. The half-orc army outside the city had long been defeated. Jiangbai also opened the city gate and hunted down some of them. He also killed a lot. But at the same time, what they didn't expect was that because of Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran, none of the previous battle plans were used. The rest of the half-orc army also scattered and fled. Jiangbai and the others also had work to do. There would always be some people with poor directions who would run into some blind alleys, waiting for Jiangbai and the others to encircle and annihilate them. Anyone who escaped into the alleyway would not be able to escape. At least half of the hundreds of thousands of soldiers left the city. The remaining half also cleaned up the battlefield. 0 casualties. They defeated the fallen city's plague army. Such a glorious record made everyone feel incredible. Chapter 1335. Li Zongjiu directly used his mind power to extract the memories of the two of them. Then he quickly read through them. Indeed, with the identities of these two people, he was able to come into contact with some more secretive things. Even from the memories of these two people, Li Zongjiu also knew that the destruction of the Great Yin Empire back then was due to the secret collusion of some people with the Great Yin Empire. That was why the Yin Kingdom was destroyed. It was truly a very heroic tragedy. Even when such a thing happened, it had already exposed the despicable nature of these people. Now these people were clearly nurturing a tiger. In fact, it was no longer nurturing a tiger, but there was no way to contain it. The strength of the fallen race was something they had never expected. Therefore, now the 5 nations of the Holy Mountain were also looking for a way to seal these half-beastmen back. But how could there be such a good thing? More than half of the Beast God Temple's teleportation was already done. It was also because of the Beast God Temple that most of the experts were restrained, and the rest were unable to free themselves, which gave the 5 nations of the Holy Mountain a chance. Just like when the Beast God Temple was completely teleported over, the fall of the Holy Martial Realm was just a snap of the fingers. It was too easy for the other party to do this. However, these people were still like a bunch of idiots. They were still hiding under the protection of the Holy Mountain's formation, cultivating there and enjoying the fruits of their labor. They seemed to still be immersed in the excitement of destroying the Yin Kingdom. After all, they had been shrouded in the shadow of the Yin Kingdom for hundreds of years. Now that they had finally destroyed the Yin Kingdom, they naturally had to celebrate. 108 members of the Tian Sha group. Li Zongjiu was also sorting out the most important information, which was also the information that Li Zongjiu cared about. Just the heaven emanations alone had a total of 108 people. However, during the battle with the Great Yin Kingdom, they had lost 68 people. Now there were only 40 people left, and the top 10 of them were all still alive. Li Zongjiu and Qi Yinran killed 2 of them. There were still 38 people left. At this moment, the Tian Sha group had 38 members. There were 5 Tian Sha experts in the Absolute Saint realm. Li Zongjiu opened his eyes, and there was a serious look in his eyes. 5 saints. This was the most deadly existence. Li Zongjiu had experience fighting against absolute saints as well. He had fought against the heavenly demon tribe. That guy was equivalent to an absolute saint. Just the heavenly monster tribe was enough to make Li Zongjiu flee to this place. As a result, Li Zhongjiu could imagine how terrifying it would be if 5 absolute saints were to descend upon him. Apart from them, there were also at least 6 people from the Dark Hall. 2 palace lords and 4 vice-palace lords must all be absolute saints. Just by casually adding it up, it was a total of 11. Let's not talk about those elders who were tinkering with the teleportation array. If the 11 of them were to join forces, even that person from the sacred mountain wouldn't be able to resist them. No wonder he had been hiding in the array and refused to come out. If he came out, any one of them would be found and killed in a matter of minutes. I can't take it anymore. If I don't break through to the absolute saint realm, I'll be finished. In Li Zhongjiu's heart, there was a sense of urgency. After this attack, the members of the Sky Demon tribe would definitely notice. If he couldn't break through to the absolute saint realm, he would definitely die the next time he faced an attack from the Sky Demon tribe. If he still had the Chaos Yuan Bell, he might be able to fight. But now, even if he had the unparalleled sword, at most, he could barely protect himself in the hands of an absolute saint. Looks like I have to prepare in advance, Li Zhongjiu thought to himself. Li Zhongjiu didn't have any means to deal with an absolute saint, so he had to prepare well. My body should be able to withstand the pill now. After Li Zhongjiu stripped the soul power of the 2 men, they died completely. It was just a broken body. Li Zhongjiu then told Qi Yinran about his discovery. Qi Yinran frowned as she listened. She didn't expect the strength of these people to be so terrifying. It was even more terrifying than she had imagined. With my current strength, I can fight against an absolute saint if I use my full strength. Qi Yinran said. You're already so powerful? Li Zhongjiu looked at Qi Yinran in surprise. I've mastered the Bluebird platform recently, so I can exert more power. It shouldn't be a problem. But if 2 people come at once, I can't. Qi Yinran shook her head. If the enemy really did send 2 absolute saints over, it would be the end of the line for them. Looks like we have to let them retreat now. It'll be very dangerous if they continue to stay here, Li Zhongjiu said. Qi Yinran nodded. She understood what Li Zhongjiu meant. More than 80,000 soldiers might not be able to do much even if they stayed here. If Qi Yinran and Li Zhongjiu were defeated, none of them would be able to survive. Wait for the Saint Immortals of the Sacred Mountain to attack? That wasn't Li Zhongjiu's style. They had to control their own lives. Even if the road ahead was very difficult, they had to walk on their own, and could not place their hopes on others. Li Zhongjiu called Jiang Bai and the others to the front of the main hall. At this moment, Jiang Bai and the others were still happy. After all, this battle was indeed very satisfying. They had never seen such a victory before. It made them feel very amazed, and couldn't calm down for a long time. Senior Evil Lord, what's wrong? Jiang Bai and the others looked at Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran's expressions. They didn't seem to be very relaxed. They also realized that something worse might happen. We cannot stay in this place for long. Today's battle has damaged their core. Soon, they will definitely dispatch even more powerful individuals. At that time, even Yinran and I may not be able to block them. Therefore, all of you need to leave this place. Lin Dong's eyes widened as he spoke. Li Zhongjiu said, Leave? They had just won a battle, and now they had to leave. It was too hard for them to react. However, if even Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran couldn't deal with them, how terrifying would they be? Obviously, Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran didn't want to have more casualties here. If an expert of that level were to appear, they would indeed be reduced to cannon fodder. In fact, they might even be inferior to cannon fodder. They would be killed before the expert could even see them. How could they be considered cannon fodder? Let's go back home after we eat, Li Zhongjiu said. What about Senior Evil Lord? Aren't we leaving together? As long as we go to the Sacred Mountain, they won't dare to pursue us. Jiang Bai quickly said. Judging from Li Zhongjiu's words, it seemed that they were going to stay here. Although we might not be able to defeat them, it doesn't mean that we can't. I'm the dignified Evil Lord. How could I run away without a fight? Don't worry. If Yinran and I want to leave, no one in the sacred martial realm can stop us. Speaking up to this point, Li Zhongjiu was filled with pride. Chapter 1336. Indeed, for Li Zhongjie to say such words, he definitely had the ability to do so. With the combined strength of Li Zhongjie and Qi Yinran, they could defeat Li Zhongjie. Only if 3 saints joined forces would they be able to do so. And it was the kind of sneak attack. Otherwise, Li Zhongjie would have a way to escape, since Li Zhongjie had made it sound so serious. And Jiang Bai also knew. Li Zhongjie and the others were worried about the lives of these ordinary soldiers, so they asked the soldiers to retreat first. After that, Jiang Bai and the others did not want to affect Li Zhongjie and Qi Yinran. After all, it would be very troublesome if they had to take so many people's lives into consideration. Therefore, Jiang Bai was very tactful and asked all the troops to retreat immediately. Although these soldiers did not understand why they did not immediately kill their way out when it was such a good opportunity. But military orders were unshakable. The soldiers of the 5 nations all retreated, but Jiang Bai and Chu Yingguan chose to stay. Jiang Bai wanted to repay Li Zhongjie for saving her life. After all, Jiang Bai had troubled Li Zhongjie a lot during this period of time. Jiang Bai couldn't believe that Li Zhongjie had helped her. At least under such circumstances, Li Zhongjie was willing to help, which was a great favor to Jiang Bai and the others. Someone needed to thank him for this favor. Jiang Bai needed to use his life to thank Li Zhongjie. To be able to save so many people, Jiang Bai could die without regrets. Even if he returned to the city now, he might not be able to save the lives of the people in the city. Since he would die anyway, Jiang Bai naturally chose to stay by Li Zhongjie and Qi Yinran's side. Even if he could not participate in the battle, at least he could do something for the 2 of them. This was what Jiang Bai wanted. As for Chu Yingguan was already a dead man. To be able to live until now, and even tell the secret of the past, and let the world know that the Chu Yingguan's hometown, the contributions that the great Chu had made to the people, was already enough of a consolation. In this life, he could be considered to have no more worries. Moreover, Chu Yingguan was now regarded as Qi Yinran's nominal disciple, although he wasn't an official disciple yet. However, Chu Yingguan was determined to cultivate with Qi Yinran, live and die together. There were also some veterans who chose to stay behind. Most of them were personal guards. They had been protecting Chu Yin, or Jiang Bai, for many years. He knew that the choice of these 2 people would definitely not be wrong. Li Zhongjie and Qi Yinran did not ask these people to stay. After all, they had already explained the situation clearly to these people. There was no need to continue the stalemate. If you don't want to leave, do I have to drag you away? Since these people chose to stay, Li Zhongjie also wrote a prescription and asked these people to go and collect these herbs. He also said that these herbs were also very important and must be found. Moreover, they had to be of sufficient age. These herbs were also relatively difficult to find. Li Zhongjie estimated that these people would need a lot of time to find them. However, what Li Zhongjie did not expect was that, in just 3 days, Jiang Bai brought a group of people and arrived in front of Li Zhongjie, covered in dust. Then he presented all the medicinal ingredients to the table. It was Li Zhongjie's turn to be shocked. Could it be that the resources of the sacred martial realm were so abundant? It was no wonder that these people cultivated so quickly. It was normal for young masters to be the norm. In the Shengwu continent, a Sky Origin Ancestor Realm expert was basically an old man. For example, the old sect master of the Wuxia alchemy sect had just entered the Origin Ancestor Realm at an old age. Therefore, Li Zhongjie was also quite surprised. With so many herbs, Li Zhongjie could start refining the elixir he needed. Although he felt that the time was not yet right, Li Zhongjie estimated that he could not wait any longer. He had to get this matter done. Otherwise, Li Zhongjie did not know what would happen when he faced the enemy. He could only take a gamble. This time, Li Zhongjie spent a total of 5 days refining this elixir. After the tempering of this life, Li Zhongjie's alchemy realm had improved again. So when he refined the elixir, it was more perfect than in his previous life. When this elixir was refined next year, it was also more powerful. Guzun Soul Merging Elixir. Li Zhongjie used the materials of the sacred martial realm to refine the upgraded version of the Guzun Soul Merging Elixir. It was even more powerful than the previous Guzun Soul Merging Elixir. In my previous life, it was precisely this elixir that completely changed my fate. In this life, I want to see if my fate can be changed. Li Zhongjiu's heart was also full of hope for this upgraded Guzun soul-merging elixir. However, after consuming the elixir, Li Zhongjiu was bound to enter a state of seclusion. Even the timing of this seclusion was uncertain. Before going into seclusion, he also reminded Qi Yinran that if the enemy came, she must wake him up. If she could not defeat the enemy, she could leave first. Moreover, above the fallen city, more than a dozen formations were continuously arranged. Anyway, the number of upper-grade primordial stones in their hands was almost endless. At least if they did not need to fight, it would be very difficult to consume so many primordial stones. Even if they were used to waste, it would be enough to continue for hundreds of years. In the end, Li Zhongjiu handed the unparalleled sword to Qi Yinran. With Huo Wushuang's strength and the unparalleled sword, she should be able to hold on for a period of time. Qi Yinran was also extremely solemn. After all, this was not a trivial matter, and she could not be careless. However, she also had to remind Li Zhongjiu to cultivate in peace. Even Xiaolan has a skill that can teleport hundreds of thousands of miles in an instant. I still have the ability to escape. Qi Yinran said. Li Zhongjiu nodded, and then came to a cave in the mountain. He removed all the things around him. Under such circumstances, he could cultivate without any distractions. As he circulated his yuan power, he adjusted his body to the peak state. Then Li Zhongjiu swallowed the Guzun soul-merging elixir. After consuming the elixir, there was no earth-shattering aura, but there was an earth-shattering change in Li Zhongjiu's body. Boom! Immediately, in Li Zhongjiu's body, 3 powerful and chaotic forces began to merge with each other. Chapter 1337. Li Zhongjiu had already experienced the effects of the pill, so he didn't panic at all when he saw the fusion of his auntie's power. First, he waited quietly for the power to fuse with his own consciousness and state. At the critical moment, Li Zhongjiu had to make a move himself. However, Li Zhongjiu didn't relax at all during the process, because the fusion process was very mysterious. The slightest carelessness could lead to irreversible changes. Just as Li Zhongjiu was about to fuse with his original soul, Qi Yinran also took out her Bluebird platform. Every day, she cultivated in the city with the Bluebird platform. The human race's sacred mountain had long known about the great battle here. They also knew that Li Zhongjiu and the others had killed the enemy's Plague General and Death General, who were both members of the Sky Demons. Although the Sky Sha had suffered heavy losses during the final battle of the Great Yin Kingdom, their remaining strength could still easily destroy the entire sacred martial realm. The Beast God Temple's true strength was more terrifying than they'd imagined. Therefore, the top experts of the sacred mountain were all trying their best to find a way to break through to a higher level. As long as one of them could obtain power that surpassed the absolute saint realm, then they could completely destroy the Beast God Temple. What a pity! If those two had joined the sacred mountain and acted according to the plan, things wouldn't have turned out so badly. There are always people who think they're saviors who can save the world, but in the end, they make a mess and need us old men to clean up the mess. The sacred immortals of the sacred mountain had gathered together to discuss. They'd thought that those two had some potential, and if they'd been recruited, they might have had a chance to break through. But now it seemed that those two were going to die without a doubt. They'd killed the Sky Demons. The Sky Demons would definitely make a move. These people were the foundation of the fallen race, and they wouldn't allow any harm to come to them. Moreover, the death of the Sky Demons members was already a huge blow. The Beast God Temple would definitely investigate this matter. However, we don't have much time left. According to the current speed, their Tower of Inheritance will be completely teleported over in about 100 years. The Absolute Saints were also discussing matters together, but they didn't care about the deaths of Li Zhongjiu and the others at all. Instead, they talked about the sacred sovereign ruins. Of course, only a few of them knew about this. No one else would know where the ultimate mystery lay. Within Fallen City, Jiangbai, Chu Yan, Guan Guan, and the others were also doing their best to cultivate. Although this kind of cultivation was not useful at all, But it was still better than doing nothing. Several days later, Qi Yanran, who was cultivating, suddenly looked up at the sky. It was as if a blood cloud was coming from afar. Qi Yanran opened her eyes and stared at the void above. The blue bird Dao platform he was sitting on was rapidly gathering power. Boom! A blood-red cloud directly attacked the fluctuation below. However, it was blocked by the defensive array above the city. Jiang Bai and the others were awakened by this wave of energy. They raised their heads and looked at the sky. It's coming! As they stared at the blood cloud in the sky, the two of them were clearly quite shocked in their hearts. With such a strong fluctuation, the entire city would have been destroyed under the first wave of probing attacks, if there hadn't been a defensive formation. The two of them would have died before they could react. At this moment, looking at the vast blood cloud in front of them, the two of them were naturally shocked. Interesting. No wonder you could kill pestilence and death. A voice came from the blood cloud. It seemed to be affirming, but it also seemed to be mocking. Then hundreds of thousands of rays of energy were suddenly released from the blood cloud, and were rapidly falling down. Boom, boom, boom. Every streak of crimson-red energy contained extremely terrifying waves of energy. As the fluctuations were released, the array above Fallen City was also activated. Boom, boom. Fortunately, the Nirvana Heavenly Fire Array was quite powerful. Under the superposition of each other, there was no damage, and it resisted the opponent's attack. However, no one knew how long the dense rain-like bombardment would last. On the contrary, the power of the array was rapidly depleting. Under the protection of the array, Fallen City seemed to have become a hole, and was rapidly falling. It was directly blasted into the ground. Qi Yanran frowned slightly. The opponent's attack was extremely powerful. They didn't even show their real bodies, so Qi Yanran couldn't figure out how many people there were. However, the person controlling the blood cloud at this moment must be an expert of the absolute saint realm. Illusion, Qi Yanran called softly. The bluebird platform she was sitting on immediately rumbled. Under a ray of light, it turned into a pair of blue wings, and appeared behind Qi Yanran. As the wings flapped, Qi Yanran rushed into the sky with her. Boom! After all, there were still people in the city. If the array was broken, these people would definitely die. It was better to save as many people as possible. Moreover, the array would only last a few days. In this case, it was better to take the initiative. When Qi Yanran turned the power of the bluebird platform into wings, there was a slight change in the blood cloud in the sky. It seemed that a terrifying fist force had suddenly emerged from the blood cloud, bringing with it a bloody aura that filled the sky and fell directly. Boom! The blue light behind Qi Yanran shone brightly. She rushed up and directly destroyed the bloody light. At the same time, the desolate heaven essence in her hand turned into a surging force and swept directly into the sky. Boom! The desolate heaven essence was like a long whip that shook the mountain. In an instant, the vast blood cloud was directly scattered by the desolate heaven essence. Immediately, countless bloody forces spread out in all directions. The blood cloud dispersed. A figure in a red robe appeared between the sky and the earth. Although it was just a figure, however, it felt like an extremely terrifying heavenly pillar had completely sealed off the entire city. A mighty aura spread out directly. Similarly, opposite him, Qi Yanran's aura was no weaker than the other parties. I am Tiansha Shuiyi. Chapter 1338. Tiansha Shuiyi. When he heard this person's name, Chu Yingguan, who was in the city, trembled slightly. There was a look of disbelief in his eyes, and then a cold light flashed in his eyes. Shuiyi. Back then, there was an expert named Shuiyi among the Tiansha experts. It was Shuiyi who led his men to attack the city, and broke the defense set up by the Emperor of the Great Yen. He was extremely powerful. In the end, he fought with the Emperor of the Great Yen for 7 days and 7 nights. But in the end, the Emperor of the Great Yen also fell in his hands. With the fall of the Great Yen Emperor, the defense line of the Great Yen Kingdom had also collapsed, and the speed of its decline was rather fast, which was completely unexpected. And the Shuiyi in front of him was Chu Yingguan's enemy. But the other party's strength was too strong. In front of Shui Yi, Chu Yingguan was just as weak as an ant. Originally, Chu Yingguan also thought that revenge was hopeless. But this time, he was able to see his enemy again, which was also a blessing for him. At least, there was still a chance. Chu Yingguan held a jade pendant in his hand. This was a technique that his father had sealed in the jade pendant, with extremely strong power, when he had predicted the ominous consequences that would befall him. Chu Yingguan knew the price of this jade pendant, so he had never used it in any dangerous situation. Until now, Chu Yingguan took a deep breath and fixed his eyes on the other party. As long as there was a chance, he would use the power of this jade pendant to completely kill the enemy. Kill his enemy with his own hands. Shui Ye's indifferent eyes swept across the fallen city below, and then he withdrew them. The only person who was a little threatening was in front of him. As for the people below, they were basically no threat at all. In his eyes, they were not even as weak as ants. So, he directly focused his attention on Qi Yanran in front of him. This was because he felt a trace of threat from Qi Yanran. Among the 7 old guys, whose disciple are you? A trace of pride flashed in Shui Ye's eyes, but he was quite surprised that Qi Yanran had such a high cultivation. Therefore, Shui Yi himself also looked at Qi Yanran with a condescending attitude. If Qi Yanran was a disciple of one of the holy immortals on the holy mountain, he was only 1 generation younger than him. I'm your great aunt. Qi Yanran had been with Li Zhongjie for a long time, and sometimes she had learned bad things. But a nephew like you is too disgusting. I've decided to get rid of you personally. After saying that, Qi Yanran shook her head in disappointment. She seemed to be extremely pained by Blood Knight. Shui Yi himself was stunned. He was one of the Blood Fiend 5 saints. But now, he was actually taken advantage of by a teenage girl. The high-level fallen race already looked exactly the same as humans, but the blood flowing in their bodies was different. It was this point that completely separated the 2 races. They had the same appearance but different inside. Moreover, both sides were extremely powerful and intelligent, so this was very normal. In the end, only one side would survive. You're courting death. Shui Yi waved his hand and turned a piece of dark cloud into a blood cloud out of thin air. It fell directly toward Qi Yanran in front of him. The moment the blood cloud fell, it transformed into an extremely terrifying scene. It seemed as if there were tens of millions of blood beasts running in the blood cloud. The powerful aura they brought rushed directly toward Qi Yanran. Qi Yanran did not dare to be careless. Shui Yi was a true absolute saint expert. In terms of strength, he was even more powerful than the heavenly monster tribe. A casual move from him was enough to make her go all out. The wings on her back shook. Suddenly, a terrifying green light burst out from her body. The green light seemed to turn into a terrifying light sword. It directly collided with the blood cloud formed by Shui Ye's blood beast's army with a boom. Boom! Immediately, the terrifying blood cloud was split into 2 by the green light. At this very moment, all of the blood beast's power had been completely destroyed. Shui Ye's eyes flashed with surprise. After all, there were not many people who could break his move in one move. However, this was not the end. Qi Yanran also knew that her strength was not Shui Ye's match. If she were to be entangled for a long time, it would be disadvantageous for her. Therefore, Qi Yanran directly used her killer move. Under the green light, another 3 rays of light broke through the air. It seemed to have shattered the space in front of it, and was directly transmitted to Shui Yi. Insignificant skill, Shui Yi sneered when he saw this. However, in the next moment, there was a boom. Suddenly, 3 holes appeared on Shui Ye's body. Even Shui Ye's extremely exquisite cloak had 3 holes in it. Qi Yanran clapped her hands, and the desolate heaven essence immediately turned into a rope and trapped Shui Yi. At the same time, Qi Yanran increased the output of the light beam and injected her yuan power into it. Boom! This power instantly burned Shui Ye's body. Shui Yi immediately roared to the sky. Below in Fallen City, Chu Yan, Guan Yan, and the others were dumbfounded. Could it be that Senior Qi Yanran was going to win? She won so easily, not to mention whether she would win or not. Just the appearance of this move had almost exhausted Qi Yanran's strength. Moreover, this move was Qi Yanran's most powerful move. It could be said that she had used all her strength. It was not as simple as it looked. Shui Yi did not expect Qi Yinran to directly use her killer move. At the same time, Shui Yi himself had not fought for a long time. Since there was a chance now, he would like to exchange a few moves with Qi Yinran. He wanted to see how strong Qi Yinran was, and play with the person in front of him. Is that all? You seem to have reached the peak. The corners of Shui Yi's mouth curled into a sneer. He swung his hand fiercely. With a loud bang, the 3 light beams in front of him were directly shattered. What? Qi Yinran's 5-colored divine light was broken by her opponent. At the same time, the injuries on Shui Yi's body rapidly recovered. While recovering, Shui Yi directly stretched out his hand toward Qi Yinran. Boom! A terrifying bloody hand slapped toward Qi Yinran. This move almost sealed all of Qi Yinran's escape routes. There was no way for her to escape. Boom! Qi Yinran's wings blocked in front of her body. With one move, her body retreated rapidly. Chapter 1339. Shui Yi's attack directly pushed Qi Yinran back, and her body smashed into the city. Boom! A huge pit appeared under Qi Yinran's body. Although Shui Yi's attack was powerful, it did not hurt Qi Yinran. After all, the power of the Green Bird platform was beyond imagination. It was also a treasure of the Demon Clan. Shui Yi had also discovered the strength of the Azure Bird Dao platform, and immediately exclaimed in surprise. Girl, your strength is average, but you have a lot of treasures in your hands. Even the power of the 5-colored divine light released by Qi Yinran left a deep impression on Shui Yi. If his strength was slightly weaker just now, he would have been crippled. Even if his defense could not block it. If it were any other person from the Sky Demons, they might not be able to block it, so it was still quite dangerous. Qi Yinran's strength was not strong, but she had a lot of tricks up her sleeve. This made Shui Yi rather displeased. How could a human girl like her own such a powerful Dharma treasure? As for the Fallen Clan, they were already top-notch powerhouses, but they had very few treasures in their hands. Of course, there were some, but because there were so few of them, they could not have them. They did not even get their hands on them. But all of them fell into the hands of the elders. If they wanted some top treasures, they had to do it themselves. Without any hesitation, Shui Yi immediately leaped down. He directly rushed down to the fallen city below. Boom! In the sky above the fallen city, the power of a terrifying array suddenly filled the air. Shui Yi, who swooped down, was actually sent flying. Shui Yi's eyes also flashed with a trace of surprise as he flew backwards. How could this be? Shui Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light. He had tested the array just now, and its power could at most block 30% of his power. But just now, he used 50% of his power, and he was still sent flying. There's someone else? There was someone who could hide under his nose. This caused Shui Yi's eyes to be rather surprised. Immediately, he quickly searched, wanting to find the location of this figure. Beside Qi Yinran, a light sword with an incomparably sharp aura emerged. At this moment, it was also emitting an extremely intense sharpness in all directions. In fact, it was even heading straight for the sky. A figure gradually appeared on the sword. At this moment, it was displayed in front of everyone's eyes. When they saw this figure appear, Chu Yan, Guan Yan, and the others were also quite shocked. This was because the figure that appeared was also a peerless beauty. Her appearance could be said to be devastatingly beautiful. Compared with Qi Yinran, she had another level of beauty. She was even more beautiful with a kind of sharpness, which made people not dare to look directly at her, and not dare to approach her. Most importantly, they had never seen this person before. This is Jiang Bai, and the others were also very surprised. The strength of the person in front of them was enough to shock both of them. Such an expert was actually able to hide beside the two of them, and they didn't even have the slightest clue before. It was truly amazing. Qi Yinran knew very well that she was no match for him. If she continued to fight, it might not be beneficial to her. Therefore, while she still had some strength, she directly joined forces with Huo Wushuang to see if they could force him back. Huo Wushuang's figure emerged. Immediately, an earth-shattering flame spread across the sky above Fallen City. Rumble! Huo Wushuang also made a series of hand seals. immediately operating a terrifying array on the spot. Then, he activated the array formation under his seat. There were more than 10 heavenly fire nirvana arrays. At this moment, all of them had merged into a large array. Although Huo Wushuang's array cultivation had not reached the 10th level, in fact, his own cultivation was infinitely close to the 10th level. He was only missing the last bit of opportunity. If he could sense this powerful formation and comprehend it, he would be able to figure out the last barrier. Then, breaking through would be a matter of course. At this moment, there were more than 10 hell lotuses blooming in the sky above the fallen city. The momentum was so great that it directly forced Shui Yi to take 2 steps back. Under this light, there was also a considerable amount of shock. A divine array master, Shui Yi exclaimed. Shui Yi had also experienced the terror of an array master. The strength of these array masters simply made the people of the fallen clan want to kill them as soon as possible. At the same time, they also thought that they must get rid of these array masters, which was why they targeted the array master's assassination. The Beast God Temple's assassination hall also became famous because of this. The bloodshed of that year had basically wiped out the roots of array masters. At most, only a few of them were left. However, it would still take a long time for them to cultivate to become a top array master. At least, it was not the time for them to do so now. Why did such a powerful array master appear in front of him? Shui Yi's heart was a little nervous, but if he could kill a divine array master, the credit he could obtain would naturally be considerable. Shui Yi still wanted to make a contribution and go one step further. If he could become an elder, there would be more opportunities for Shui Yi to improve his own strength. Today is a good opportunity for me, Shui Yi, to make a contribution. Immediately, Shui Yi let out a low growl. With a shake of his body, he charged downwards. This time, his body quickly condensed into a bloody cloud that overflowed the sky. Blood cloud tornado. It was as if there was a blood-red tornado revolving around him, maintaining such a terrifying power. Huo Wushuang gently raised his hand, and the dozens of hell lotuses in front of him instantly spewed out a pillar of flame from the center of the flower. Boom! Boom! The pillar of flame directly converged with the blood cloud in midair. It was originally a defensive array, but in Huo Wushuang's hands, it directly became an offensive array. Moreover, this offensive array was also quite powerful. Its power was really terrifying. Even Qi Yanran did not expect that when the array's power was activated, it would have such a terrifying offensive power. What a strong power! Even Qi Yanran herself did not know that the array's power was so strong. At this moment, the blood cloud around Shui Yi was also severely damaged. Shui Yi, who had exposed himself, was instantly hit by several hell lotuses' flames. Immediately, Shui Yi was blasted away. Moreover, under such power, Shui Yi was also severely injured by the flames. The flames blasted Shui Yi away, at least a few thousand miles away. At this moment, half of Shui Yi's body was almost destroyed by the flames. It looked extremely terrifying. I don't believe it. Today, your life as an array master will fall into my hands. Transform, Royal Bloodwing Bat. Chapter 1340. Immediately, Shui Yi's figure grew bigger. A pair of blood-red bat wings sprouted from his back. After appearing, the aura around Shui Yi's body became extremely terrifying. Facing Shui Yi's soaring aura, a light flashed in Qi Yanran's eyes. However, Huo Wushuang didn't seem to feel any fear. His hands continued to form seals to control the array in front of him. Then, the great array behind him began to condense. The dozens of Hell's Lotus flowers also condensed into an even larger Hell's Lotus flower. Boom! Shui Yi didn't say anything else. He directly flew down with the power of the blood bat. As he flew, the space around him trembled violently. It seemed like it would shatter in the next second. A terrifying pressure descended. Even though they were separated by a large array, they could still clearly feel the opponent's power. It seemed like it was brewing above their heads. Qi Yanran secretly clenched her fists. If Huo Wushuang couldn't block it, then they could only fight to the death. If that happened, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, Huo Wushuang's means were beyond imagination. He was a true array master. After Huo Wushuang condensed such power, the fire lotus around him directly collided with the power of the blood bat in front of him with a boom. Boom! The domineering power was like layers upon layers of waves, rapidly sweeping out into the distance. Huo Wushuang was expressionless. A huge wave of flames spread out in the sky. One could see that Shui Ye's figure was forced to retreat. Then, Huo Wushuang immediately flipped his wrist and released the unparalleled sword. It violently swept forward. Boom! The unparalleled sword seemed to contain a shocking slash. It directly slashed the sky in front of him into two halves. Shui let out a low growl. He was actually forced to retreat by the opponent's move. He flew through the air and spurted out a stream of blood. Obviously, he was severely injured by the sword. Shui Ye's figure instantly flew back a few hundred miles. He directly shifted in the sky. Obviously, the power of the sword was quite strong. It was unbearable for Shui Yi. He was severely injured. Qi Yinran's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, but then her eyes revealed a strange light. In the blink of an eye, his expression became solemn. After Huo Wushuang used this move, his body seemed to be unable to support it anymore. Immediately, the unparalleled sword fell from the sky, bringing Huo Wushuang to the ground with a swoosh. It landed right in front of Qi Yinran. Clearly, Huo Wushuang's strength had been completely exhausted at this moment, and it was difficult for him to continue fighting. It was even difficult for him to leave the unparalleled sword. Qi Yinran held the unparalleled sword in her hand. A light flashed in his eyes. Next, it was time to truly go all out. Shui Yi was indeed frightened by the sword just now. The sword had almost pierced through his cultivation core. Fortunately, the sword had missed by a bit. That was why he didn't directly shatter his core. Otherwise, Shui Yi really wouldn't be able to hold on. He had never thought that the battle he had fought would be so arduous. Even Shui Yi himself was quite surprised. However, Shui Yi soon discovered something. The other party had actually disappeared. The fierce woman just now had actually disappeared. Could it be some kind of insidious trick? Shui Yi thought to himself. After all, the human clan was full of tricks, and the other party was a powerful array master. Therefore, it would be troublesome if some top existence used some kind of trick to trick him. Therefore, Shui Yi was very cautious. However, after Shui Yi observed for a while, he realized that there was indeed nothing wrong with the person in front of him. The fallen city below seemed to have used up all the energy of the array. Immediately, a light flashed in Shui Yi's eyes. Good timing. At this moment, Shui Yi mustered up his courage and descended. As expected, when he got close to the fallen city, there was no longer any obstruction from the array. All the energy just now was wasted in an instant with this move. Haha, I almost died here. Shui Yi's lips curled into a cold smile. In the face of the current situation, Shui Yi still didn't let down his guard. He observed the situation around him at all times. But obviously, after his transformation, Qi Yinran was no longer his opponent. However, he still had to be careful of Huo Wushuang, who had attacked him ruthlessly just now. I thought it was strange. That guy is just a sword spirit. Shui Yi said slowly. Now, after a slight reaction, he immediately realized that it was no wonder that he didn't find Huo Wushuang's figure before. Now he couldn't sense any trace of Huo Wushuang. He immediately understood what was going on. You will die here today. Qi Yinran didn't say much nonsense and said indifferently. Her murderous aura was released directly. This made Shui Yi slightly stunned. Then, the expression on his face turned cold again. Haha, okay, I'll give it a try. Shui Yi immediately waved his hand. The blood bat wings on his back pulled out dozens of blood blades and suddenly swept forward. Boom! The blood blades exploded on the spot. Qi Yinran immediately resisted this move. Boom! Boom! The blood blades hit the unparalleled sword in Qi Yinran's hand. She instantly retreated with the unparalleled sword. Pung! He slammed into a wall, shattering the entire wall. Puff! Qi Yinran spat out a mouthful of blood. The next moment, the unparalleled sword in her hands was sucked by a huge force and flew towards her opponent's hand. Oh no! Qi Yinran released the desolate heaven essence and instantly bound the unparalleled sword. However, Shui Yi's strength had far exceeded Qi Yinran's. Even the desolate heaven essence in his hand only lasted for a few seconds before flying out. Whoosh! The unparalleled sword fell toward Shui. However, just as Shui was about to grab the unparalleled sword, suddenly, a powerful force was released from the side. Boom! The unparalleled sword was easily caught by a hand. When Shui looked over, he was immediately furious. The one who made the move was a young man. What's that? Shui's eyes emitted a cold light. Why was there another person? However, when Qi Yanran saw the young figure, her eyes widened instantly, and her face was filled with ecstasy. Zhongjiu. Chapter 1341. Qi Yanran's face suddenly revealed a look of pleasant surprise. His originally dim eyes once again released a luster at this moment. When he saw Li Zhongjiu appear, the uneasiness in his heart was finally able to settle down. As long as she could be with Li Zhongjiu, even if she had to die, Qi Yanran had nothing to be afraid of. It's Senior Li Zhongjiu. Jiang Bai and the others were also overjoyed. For a long time, it was not clear who was stronger between Qi Yanran and Li Zhongjiu. But no matter what, after Li Zhongjiu appeared and joined forces with Qi Yanran, they would definitely be able to force the opponent away. This situation was obviously a turning point in the battle. You deserve to die. Li Zhongjiu held the matchless sword and looked indifferently at Shui in front of him. However, when Shui saw Li Zhongjiu in front of him, he did not pay attention to Li Zhongjiu at first, but he was also a little puzzled in his heart. Where did this Li Zhongjiu come from? Just now, he had clearly searched for a while, and did not find any other figures or other threats. Why were there always one after another? To him, there was simply something wrong. Could it be that his bat sensed something wrong? Otherwise, why would people keep popping out? Or Li Zhongjiu, who was in front of him, was not a real person at all? It can't be another artifact spirit, right? What kind of nonsense is this? Shui was already a little annoyed. These people who popped out were simply causing trouble for him. And Shui did not like things to become so troublesome, so he wanted to kill them first. Immediately, Shui waved his hand. A terrifying blood blade was thrown directly at Li Zhongjiu. Bang! Before this blood blade could get close to Li Zhongjiu, it was shattered by a powerful force. It was the fluctuation of Yuan power around Li Zhongjiu. One could even faintly see a few shadows of coiling dragons appearing behind Li Zhongjiu, forming a protective state that prevented the opponent's move from approaching. When Qi Yanran saw this scene, a slight trace of surprise flashed in her eyes. Could it be? Immediately, Qi Yanran's face revealed a shocked expression. Li Zhongjiu. He actually broke through. Interesting. When Shui saw that Li Zhongjiu was actually able to block his move with just his own fluctuations, a cold glint appeared on his face. Looking down on me. Boom! The wings on his back flapped and suddenly a blood-red wing shadow whizzed forward. Boom! The terrifying power directly swept towards Li Zhongjiu. This move easily destroyed the houses along the way. Rumble! Li Zhongjiu grabbed the unparalleled sword with both hands and slashed forward with all his might. Boom! A ray of sword chi instantly cut off the blood wings. After that, the sword chi shot back along the way. Boom! Shui's body soared into the sky. He avoided being struck by the sword, but the power of this sword was indeed quite powerful. Even Shui had no choice but to retreat and take the initiative to avoid it. How is this possible? You're also an absolute saint. Shui had never thought that there would be such a young absolute saint expert. One must know that the current sacred immortals of the sacred mountain were all old bones. And they were basically old bones without any guts. There was no need to be afraid of such old bones. He understood that these people were cowardly and wanted to enjoy their old age. But he had never seen such a young absolute saint expert like Li Zhongjiu. Buddha's palm. Shui suddenly felt a strong pressure coming from above his head, making him feel as if his body was about to collapse. He looked up and saw a black pagoda falling from the sky, smashing down on his head. This made Shui want to dodge as well. However, the pagoda seemed to be locked onto him. Even with his strength, he couldn't dodge it, so he could only take it head on. Boom! Shui used all the strength in his body to push out his origin energy, and only then did he manage to shatter the pagoda. As soon as he shattered the pagoda, he saw another golden palm coming down. Mountain-toppling golden seal. Boom! With another slap, Shui was sent flying to the ground. 2. Like a cannonball, he crashed into a mountain that was hundreds of meters tall. Then the mountain collapsed with a loud bang. It was directly destroyed by Shui's tyrannical body. Clearly, Shui himself had suffered a great loss from this move. In front of Li Zhongjiu, he didn't have the slightest ability to retaliate. After breaking through, Li Zhongjiu was invincible. Triple Dragon Sword. Li Zhongjiu operated his Yuan Li and integrated the power of the 3 original spirits into the unparalleled sword. Then it exploded. Boom! As the sword aura moved, it turned into 3 ferocious dragons. Instantly, the mountain in front of him, that had already been shattered, was turned into powder again. One of the silhouettes was sent flying again. He was sent flying by the 3 dragons for a distance of hundreds of thousands of meters. Along the way, he crashed through the mountain peaks, creating a tunnel. Some of the smaller mountain peaks were also blasted into smithereens. Bang! Finally, Shui's figure lay on the ground. Blood was gushing out of his mouth. He struggled to get up, but before he could do so, he saw a figure appear in front of him. You. Who are you? Shui couldn't believe it. He was defeated by a human. Terrifying. Most importantly, he was easily defeated by Li Zhongjiu, as if he was a noob. Looking at the young man in front of him, the indifference in his eyes pierced deep into his soul. It was as if his soul was going to be drawn out. Li Zhongjiu reached out and grabbed Shui. With a flash, he returned to Fallen City. He looked at Shui's pair of wings. Without hesitation, Li Zhongjiu slashed down with his sword and cut off Shui's wings. Ah! This pair of wings wasn't condensed from energy, but a part of Shui's body. However, it was easily cut off by Li Zhongjiu. I'll leave it to you. Li Zhongjiu looked at Qi Yinran and said. Qi Yinran had been injured by this guy, so Li Zhongjiu naturally wouldn't kill him. That would be letting him off too easily. The desolate heaven essence in Qi Yinran's hand gathered in her palm. Finally, the desolate heaven essence turned into countless water droplets. Weren't you very arrogant just now? Qi Yinran struck out with her palm. The desolate heaven essence in her hand turned into countless sharp fragments and pierced through Shui's body. Chapter 1342. Shui was severely injured by this blow. Originally, Shui had already been severely injured by Li Zhongjiu's attack. Therefore, Shui didn't last long under Qi Yinran's attack. If it wasn't for his strong cultivation, he would have at least a breath of life. If he was in the Supreme Being realm, he would have died a long time ago. Qi Yinran didn't torture this guy too much. After all, Shui didn't gain much from the beginning, and was even at a disadvantage. In the end, it was also because Huo Wushuang had retreated that this guy became arrogant. What are you going to do? Qi Yinran looked at Li Zhongjiu. This was a Supreme Saint powerhouse. No matter what he was used for, he would be very useful. If he was used well, the effect that could be exerted would be unimaginable. Let's see what's in his head. Torture was of no use to these people. It would only be effective if one personally took action and seized the other party's soul. Of course, this also required a strong mind power. Unfortunately, Li Zhongjiu happened to have such strong mind power. You, what are you trying to do? Shui stared coldly at Li Zhongjiu. Although Shui was at a disadvantage now, he believed that these people wouldn't dare to do anything to him. Do you know the price of killing me? Shui said coldly. The Tian Sha of the Beast God Temple would never allow such a huge loss. If Shui died, at least tens of millions of humans would have to die in order to make up for this loss. It was precisely because of such a painful price that these people were afraid to act rashly, and did not dare to act rashly. But Li Zhongjiu couldn't care less. He pressed his hand on Shui's head, and the corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. I've just comprehended a skill recently. You can feel it in advance. In the next moment, Li Zhongjiu's eyes began to move gently, as if there was a soul swimming in Li Zhongjiu's eyes. Li Zhongjiu was born with the evil soul eye before, but it was different now. In the past, when he used the evil soul eye, it often consumed a lot of mind power. It was because of this skill that Li Zongjio was able to save his life many times. After this breakthrough, Li Zongjio's mind power suddenly skyrocketed. It turned out that Li Zongjio also had a very special constitution. Once one's physique was activated, the benefits one could obtain were innumerable. Now Li Zongjio had directly grasped some powerful and terrifying skills. Otherwise, even if he had just broken through to the absolute saint realm, he wouldn't be Shui Ye's match. Moreover, Shui Ye's strength was already relatively strong. After all, he had broken through to the absolute saint realm a few hundred years ago. As for what Li Zongjio's constitution was called, Li Zongjio didn't know. However, the evil soul eye's existence was due to Li Zongjio's extremely powerful mental strength. This mind power was so strong that Li Zongjio could directly compete with experts of the absolute saint realm, who were third grade and above. How strong was a third grade absolute saint realm? Li Zongjio didn't know. However, even if there were 10 of Shui Ye's strength, they could easily defeat him. There was no problem at all. How dare you? Shui Yi roared. However, such a harmless threat was completely ignored by Li Zongjio. He pressed his hand on Shui Ye's head and activated his mind power, directly extracting Shui Ye's soul power from his body. Boom! Shui Ye's body immediately stiffened on the spot and didn't move. However, he was still alive and didn't die immediately. Shui Yi felt that his mind power seemed to have come to a space of nothingness. In this space there was the chaotic qi. The chaotic qi was a very terrifying place. It could be said that the fallen clan had escaped from the chaotic qi with great difficulty. Otherwise, they wouldn't have had to go through so much trouble to move the beast god temple to the sacred martial realm. Because it was too painful to live in the chaotic qi, the fallen clan wanted to find a more comfortable place. In the end, they found the sacred martial realm. Now when he sensed the chaotic qi again, fear instantly penetrated Shui Ye's mind power. As for the information that Li Zongjio wanted, he didn't even need Shui Yi to speak. Li Zongjio could find the answer from Shui Yi. However, Shui Ye's appearance in Li Zongjio's spiritual hell was only that of a bat. Li Zongjio used the spiritual chains to imprison Shui Yi in the spiritual hell. At the same time, he also learned about this Tiansha. Among them, the strongest was only a third-grade saint, which was equivalent to a third-grade absolute saint. After understanding this, Li Zongjio naturally had nothing to be afraid of. He returned to the fallen city. First, he healed Qi Yanran's injuries. This battle was also very difficult. Fortunately, Qi Yanran was there to support the DNA. Otherwise, who knew how many people would have died? From what he understood from Shui Ye's mind power, Shui Yi came out of seclusion this time to find Qi Yanran and Li Zongjio and kill them both. He wanted to kill tens of millions of people to obtain enough blood qi to go back and refine a group of stronger fallen clan warriors. He wanted to use them to kill more people and obtain blood qi to enhance the strength of the beast god temple. Although this kind of mission seemed to be insignificant, since they had already come out, it was not a big deal to complete it. The most important thing was that these people of the fallen race had such violent elements in them. Even if they had nothing to do, they had to create some trouble. Fortunately, Li Zongjio stopped them. Now he was also suffering in the spiritual hell. Your body constitution is also strange. When Li Zongjio healed Qi Yanran, he also discovered that Qi Yanran's body constitution was extremely strong. It was even stronger than Li Zongjio's. However, it was still in a state of waiting to be activated, and had not really erupted. Previously, the elder of the Sparrow Divine Palace also told me what my body constitution was, but I didn't remember it. After all, even if I remembered it, I wouldn't know. At that time, I just wanted to get out of here early and see you early. When Qi Yanran said this, she actually became shy. This time, the injury actually allowed Qi Yanran's cultivation to progress further. The greater the setback, the greater Qi Yanran's gain. She even felt this gain involuntarily. Even if you don't want it, you can get it directly. I seem to be about to break through. Qi Yanran's eyes were suddenly filled with surprise. Chapter 1343. She's going to break through. Li Zongjio was stunned for a moment, and then he was overjoyed. It was so fast. He had to admit that this was entirely due to Qi Yinran's own physique. Therefore, Li Zongjie was also quite happy for Qi Yinran. Don't worry about breaking through. I will protect you. With me here, no one can disturb you. Li Zongjie said. With Li Zongjie's current strength, he was naturally qualified to say such words. If Shui Yi came, he would simply be defeated by Li Zongjie. There was no threat to him at all. According to Li Zongjie's guess, the people of Sacred Mountain would come soon. With these people's character, after knowing that Li Zongjie had killed these people, they would certainly come to curry favor with him. To put it bluntly, they would come to recruit Li Zongjie and recruit Li Zongjie to Sacred Mountain. In these people's opinion, Li Zongjie would be very willing to join Sacred Mountain and become the guardian of the human race. Unfortunately, Li Zongjie wasn't interested in these things at all. If these people knew what was good for them, they wouldn't disturb him. If they didn't, then don't blame Li Zongjie for being impolite. Killing these people was just a very simple thing for Li Zongjie. Qi Yinran was breaking through in a courtyard. Now that there was no one in the fallen city, it naturally became the territory of Li Zongjie and the others. It was unknown how much effort it would take to gather all the people in the city. Recently, Xu Yan was also comprehending the mental cultivation method taught by Qi Yinran. He emboldened himself and came to Li Zongjie to ask for advice. After all, Li Zongjie was usually relatively cold, so under normal circumstances, no one dared to approach him. But in reality, Li Zongjie's character was not that unreasonable. Moreover, Xu Yanguan had received the inheritance of Qi Yinran. Li Zongjie had also guided Xu Yanguan on behalf of Qi Yinran. As for Jiangbai, he was also working hard. Jiangbai's talent wasn't low either. With Li Zongjie's occasional guidance, the two girls immediately made great progress. When Li Zongjie had nothing to do, he sat in the courtyard next to Qi Yinran, fishing and making tea. Even Li Zongjie hadn't thought that breaking through to the absolute saint realm would be so easy. Throughout the entire process, Li Zongjie almost doubted the authenticity of his own cultivation. However, Li Zongjie also knew that the reason he was able to break through so easily was because of the assistance of the 4 Supreme Dragon Souls. Now the 4 Supreme Dragon Souls had also injected all of their powers into his body. Li Zongjie's Hell method had also achieved a breakthrough, and his strength had greatly increased. Most importantly, Li Zongjie's own body had been activated. Now, even if he didn't cultivate every day, he would still make great progress. Since I don't know what to call it, I'll just call it the body of evil god. It sounds vulgar, but it's domineering enough. Li Zongjie thought to himself. Half a month had already passed. On this day, the sun was shining brightly, and there were no clouds in the sky. According to Jiangbai, it was the beginning of spring. It was a good day for everything to recover. It's a good day for everything to recover. Don't come looking for trouble at this time. Li Zongjie said leisurely. Huo Wushuang was also repairing the formation. After controlling the formation last time, Huo Wushuang's understanding of the formation seemed to have reached a higher level. His cultivation in array formations was increasing almost every moment. Li Zongjie estimated that she was not far from becoming a god-level formation master. When a skill reached its peak, it would bring about a very terrifying change. Li Zongjie was like this, cultivating his alchemy skills directly to the realm of the deity. He could easily become an expert, and this skill would not be forgotten no matter where he went. If Huo Wushuang cultivated the formation to its peak, there would be an unexpected miracle. Speaking of which, there's already someone who has reached the god level in formations. Li Zongjie thought. It was the heavenly demon dragon Sparrow from the heavenly demon tribe. That girl had already reached the god level in formations. Otherwise, the 3 elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace would not have been captured so easily. Something like this had happened. Now that Li Zongjie had broken through, he was confident that he could fight with the heavenly demon dragon Sparrow. If he had to do it again, it would not be like the last time when he had to escape through the teleportation formation. It was too embarrassing. Just thinking about it made him feel very embarrassed. Fortunately, it was not too late for him to break through, and he would have a chance to get it back sooner or later. Above the sky, a ray of light surged. Buzz! It was like a ray of light that pierced through the heavens and earth, like a golden sun, hanging high in the sky at this moment, blooming with intense light. Boom! Huo Wuxuang saw two powerful rays of golden flame in front of her. Furthermore, the other party had released his aura. It was obvious that he had come with hostility. Therefore, Huo Wuxuang's expression was not too polite, and there was even a trace of coldness in her eyes that slowly emerged. She stared at the people in front of her. There were a total of 4 people, 2 elders and 2 young people. The young people were a man and a woman. Their expressions were arrogant, and their lips were thin. When they looked at the dilapidated city below, a trace of disdain involuntarily appeared in their eyes. They had actually come to such a desolate place, for a person who did not know what was good for him. Although cities like the Fallen City were being attacked by the Fallen Clan, these great nations lived in a peaceful environment. Therefore, they had never seen such a dilapidated city. If the 2 of them were to live in such a place, they naturally would not be willing to. Therefore, there was helplessness in their eyes, and they only wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Master, who exactly is it down there? To think that you would personally make a move. East-coming sage immortal scratched his snow-white beard. Although he was standing high up in the sky, his eyes had already taken in everything below. Among them, he naturally saw Li Zhongjio, who was leisurely fishing in the courtyard. Although Li Zhongjio is arrogant and unruly, he has real skills. If we can train him well, and use him for our sacred mountain, it will be a good thing. Some time ago, Shuiyi of the Beast God Temple's Tiansha group died in his hands. Alright, let's go down and see what kind of skills this kid has. It's not easy to enter our sacred mountain. Not everyone has such qualifications. The other one was called North Sky Sage Immortal. It did not matter what his real name was, but this nickname must be resounding. Before he arrived, his name had already resounded in the sky. Let's go down. Chapter 1344. The figures of East-coming Sage Immortal and North Sky Sage Immortal directly landed on Fallen City. However, they only hovered in the air and did not land directly. After all, if they landed, wouldn't it show that their status was low? Therefore, the 2 of them seemed to be standing on top of Fallen City. East-coming Sage Immortal and North Sky Sage Immortal have arrived. Quickly come and pay your respects. The young man stepped forward. This was also the reason why he had to bring a few people with him. In order to show his noble status as a Sage Immortal, he needed someone to do things like shouting when he went out. It was impossible for him to do everything by himself. Otherwise, it would be too degrading. The young man shouted. His status was not low. He was the eldest disciple of East-coming Sage Immortal. Because of his good aptitude and noble birth, he had the opportunity to learn from East-coming Sage Immortal, and was directly accepted as the eldest disciple. It was even said that half of the future hope of the entire sacred martial realm fell directly on these young people. Therefore, this young man had always regarded himself as the future savior. Although the appearance of the Beast God Temple had disrupted the original order of the sacred martial realm, it was actually a process of reshuffling the cards. It was precisely because of the existence of the Beast God Temple that some weak people with low bloodlines were eliminated, leaving behind only the elites. Only then were they qualified to live in this world. This young man's origin was also the son of the Great Wu country's Duke. The Duke was the head of all the heavenly masters in Great Wu. He was also the top supreme being expert. Even though he had yet to reach the sacred immortal realm, the Garrison Duke was basically one of the top existences in his own country, if the sacred immortal realm did not appear. His strength was extremely terrifying. It was also because of this that this young man named Shen Wu had such an attitude, although it was just passing a message in front of a sage immortal. However, for Shen Wu, this was something to be very proud of. In front of his peers, he was able to hold his head high. He was even like a moon surrounded by stars, becoming a top existence among them. No matter where he went, he was very eye-catching. Shen Wu himself also enjoyed this feeling very much. Shen Wu immediately roared, but there was no movement from the Fallen City below. Could it be that there was no one in Fallen City? No, there should be someone. The senses of 2 sage immortals would never be wrong. Could it be that the joy of the arrival of a sage immortal had gotten to their heads? Shen Wu and the other woman also spoke. Moreover, this summon also carried a trace of pressure. A wave of power directly descended upon the city below. Huo Wushuang, who was standing beside Li Zhongjie, had also noticed the four of them. However, he didn't do anything until the other party actually released a wave of pressure. Moonfall's strength had already reached the primitive emperor realm. To have such a cultivation at such an age was indeed something to be proud of. However, his mistake was that he shouldn't have been so impudent in front of Huo Wushuang. As Moonfall's pressure descended, the great array above the fallen city was directly activated. Countless flaming lotuses surrounded Moonfall. Yuluo's face was filled with shock. This was because the surrounding fire lotuses were quite powerful. Once it erupted, it was definitely not something Yuluo could endure. So Yuluo's face instantly turned pale. Yuluo, be careful. When Shen Wu saw that Yuluo's body was surrounded by blooming fire lotuses, his face was filled with shock. Just as he was about to approach her, he realized that the fire lotuses would explode if he moved a little. How dare you attack me? Yuluo's face was filled with anger. She didn't believe that these people would dare to be so impudent in the presence of a sage immortal. Yuluo was very straightforward. She directly summoned a bright light sword from her hand. Don't use your Yuan Qi, Shen Wu hurriedly shouted. However, it was already too late. Just the Yuan power undulations from the light sword had already completely ignited the surrounding flames. Boom! Boom! Many angry lotuses bloomed in the sky. Yuluo was immediately in the middle of the explosion. She was directly blasted to the left and right, and the power was also increasing little by little. Shen Wu was also blasted away at this moment. Huo Wushuang only needed to use a finger to pinch these people to death in the Origin Emperor realm. Previously, he was just talking about principles. It was fine if you were impudent with your words, but you actually wanted to attack. This was a little too arrogant. Donglai Sage Immortal and Beikong Sage Immortal didn't expect this. The other party actually dared to attack. Beikong Sage Immortal quickly reached out and directly pulled Yuluo, who was in the middle of the explosion. If Yuluo continued to endure the power of the explosion, she would probably die directly. All of the flame energy followed Yuluo's body into the sky and quickly caught up with her. Beikong Sage Immortal frowned. Condense. He stretched out his hand and gently patted it. Then he completely gathered this energy. All of the flame energy condensed and compressed into a small fireball in front of Beikong Sage Immortal. As an absolute saint expert, you don't have to be so calculative with these juniors. Donglai Sage Immortal snorted coldly. Obviously, he didn't expect Li Zhongjie to not give face to the two of them and directly attack as soon as he arrived. He really didn't put them in his eyes. Look at Yuluo's state. Her entire body was charred black from head to toe. Furthermore, he was currently in a coma. Without even thinking, he directly blasted her unconscious. If Beikong Sage Immortal didn't intervene in time, she would probably be blown to death. Even at that time, Li Zhongjie wouldn't stop. After all, in the eyes of an absolute saint expert, these people's lives were really nothing. After reaching this level, one would already consider everything and everyone beneath one's notice. But obviously, Li Zhongjie's actions had thoroughly angered the two sage immortals. Hehe, with the strength of the two of you, you're not qualified for me to meet you. As for these juniors, if I want to kill them, do you think you can save them? Li Zhongjie said indifferently, and put the fishing rod aside. The small movement just now had already scared the little goldfish away. It was really disappointing. Chapter 1345. At this moment, Jiang Bai and the others were standing in the courtyard. Usually, they had nothing to do other than cultivate. However, recently, Jiang Bai was forming a more elite troop. These people were deeply moved by Jiang Bai's achievements. Therefore, they were willing to risk their lives to ask Jiang Bai to train them. At this moment, the number of soldiers and experts in the city was more than 100. In fact, these people did not dare to get close to Li Zhongjie's residence. This was because it was said that Li Zhongjie was a powerful existence that was comparable to a saint immortal. Since he was such a terrifying existence, They naturally didn't dare to approach him rashly. If they offended or disturbed him in the slightest, wouldn't they be done for? Saint Immortal East Coming did not expect Li Zhongjiu's temper to be so bad. He and Bei Kong looked at each other. The purpose of this visit was to recruit Li Zhongjiu. After all, Li Zhongjiu didn't know how powerful the holy mountain was. Ignorance was blameless, so they might as well give Li Zhongjiu some face. The two of them descended. Boom! Boom! The two Saint Immortals descended at the same time. Even without any superfluous movements, the same tyrannical aura was released. The feeling of the surroundings suddenly changed. Chu Yinguan and the others immediately became nervous. This was a natural reaction of their bodies. Li Zhongjiu gently waved his hand, completely eliminating the pressure of the two men. There was no longer any trace of them in the entire space. Chu Yen, Guan Guan, and the others felt their bodies lighten. They finally returned to normal. They breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Li Zhongjiu gratefully. At the same time, there was a faint trace of coldness in his eyes as he looked at the people in front of him. Shen Wu held Moonfall, who had been burned black, with a furious expression on his face. You hurt Moonfall to this extent. Today, you must give me an explanation. Shen Wu and Yu Luo were like a golden couple. But now that Yu Luo was beaten up like this, Shen Wu naturally wanted to fight for Yu Luo. Li Zhongjiu casually flicked his finger. Bang! A terrifying force directly sent Shen Wu flying. Hundreds of walls were broken behind him. Shen Wu was thrown more than 500 meters away. During the whole process, Shen Wu's own power was also confined by Li Zhongjiu. Therefore, in the process of being sent flying just now, Shen Wu used his own body to smash these walls into pieces. If one were to ask these cultivators, how many of them would be willing to work so hard to temper their bodies, especially under such excellent cultivation conditions? Who would be willing to suffer such hardships? Therefore, when Shen Wu's figure stopped, the bones in his body were already broken to the point that he was about to die. Even though the pain he was enduring was quite intense, Shen Wu was unable to make any sound at all. He could only roll his eyes and directly pass out. There was still a mixture of blood and saliva at the corner of his mouth. It's finally quiet. We're all the same, so I'll spare his life. If we don't discipline him properly when we return, even his clan and his master will suffer a calamity. Li Zhongjiu said calmly. The person who came was also an absolute saint expert. However, Li Zhongjiu did not hold back at all. He did not need to give the other party too much face at all. This was because Li Zhongjiu himself was confident that he could kill all of these people one by one. Moreover, these so-called Saint Immortals of the sacred mountain, they had not saved the world at all. They had only done it for their own benefit, to ensure that they would not be affected by these people. They had even thought of sacrificing the lives of the people in exchange for a temporary respite. Such people were naturally not worthy of Li Zhongjiu's attention. However, if he killed these people now, it might cause the Beast God Temple to speed up their attack. Li Zhongjiu also needed to wait for a while. When Qi Yinren really broke through, he could consider killing his way to the headquarters of the Beast God Temple, even if the other party had some hidden experts. However, these people had been delayed by the teleportation formation. Therefore, it was still very advantageous for Li Zhongjiu and the others. With your cultivation and age, it's not too much to say such words. The East Arrival Sage Immortal did not even turn his head. He did not care about a mere Shen Wu at all. Moreover, Li Zhongjiu had also spared his life. If it weren't for the large number of heavenly materials and earthly treasures offered by the Great Wu's State Duke, the Eastern Sage Immortal wouldn't have accepted such a waste as an apprentice. However, Li Zhongjiu had embarrassed himself in front of so many people. This could be regarded as a provocation to the Eastern Sage Immortal. If the East Arrival Sage Immortal and Li Zhongjiu continued to bicker, it would directly make things worse. The East Arrival Sage Immortal also needed to finish the matter first. If Li Zhongjiu did not listen to his advice and insisted on becoming enemies with the sacred mountain, then he could not blame him for being ruthless. Now that the human race is in danger, with your skills, join the sacred mountain and fight for the future of the human race. What do you think? The East Arrival Sage Immortal opened his mouth and directly invited Li Zhongjie to join the sacred mountain. You hypocrites, no need to pretend in front of me. I know very well what you want. Leave now and I'll pretend I never saw you. Don't disturb me when I'm fishing. Sometimes my temper is not so good. Li Zhongjie's breakthrough to the absolute saint realm had brought a great change to his temper. If it was before, he would not have allowed these people to say so much. They would have come to disgust him. If you don't join the sacred mountain, we'll still include you in the Beast God Temple's camp. Then, the Tiansha of the Beast God Temple and the sacred mountain will come looking for you. Do you think there's a place for you in this vast world? The North Sky Saint Immortal sneered. He thought Li Zhongjie was a smart person, but now it seemed that he was not tactful at all. Do you think you're the only one with a mouth? You talk too much. Li Zhongjie glanced at the North Sky Saint Immortal. The North Sky Saint Immortal's body stiffened. At this moment, there seemed to be a strong force rushing into his body. The North Sky Saint Immortal struggled violently. The tyrannical elemental energy within Li Zhongjie's body instantly emanated outwards, and he was almost controlled by Li Zhongjie. You want to control me? The North Sky Saint Immortal didn't expect Li Zhongjie to be this strong. Just now, if it wasn't for his spiritual defense magic weapon to remind him, he was afraid that he would really be controlled by Li Zhongjie. Control you? That's not a bad idea. Originally, Li Zhongjie had planned to let the two of them leave and go their separate ways. However, the North Sky Saint Immortal's words reminded Li Zhongjie, following which, Li Zhongjie's eyes also emitted a trace of evil charm. Chapter 1346. When Li Zhongjie's eyes lit up, the surrounding space seemed to have changed. The surrounding space seemed to have changed because of this, and a strong fluctuation swept out. Beikong Saint Immortal and Dongkong Saint Immortal were instantly on guard. Brat, you want to control the two of us with just your strength? Dream on. Naive. Donglai Saint Immortal snorted. He seemed to find Li Zhongjie's behavior ridiculous. He was simply overestimating himself. Since this boy has long wanted to defect to the enemy, we'll enforce justice on behalf of the heavens. We can't let this boy continue to be arrogant and bring disaster to the world. Donglai Saint Immortal is right. Beikong Saint Immortal nodded in agreement. At this moment, he naturally hoped to kill Li Zhongjie directly. After all, Li Zhongjie was still so young, but he was so powerful that he was already a threat. Naturally, they couldn't let Li Zhongjie continue to grow. Since he couldn't be used by the sacred mountain, he would definitely become a big disaster in the future. Immediately, the mind strength of the three sides collided in the sky above Fallen City. Boom! When the mind strength of the three collided, it seemed to form a terrifying vortex. In this vortex, there was a powerful force condensing. It devoured everything. The confrontation of the three's power was enough to destroy everything in front of them. But at this moment, it was under control in a very good environment. Immediately, Li Zhongjie waved his hand and pointed at the space in front of him. Buzz! Immediately, the space in front of them changed rapidly. It was enough to see that the environment in front of them had changed. In an instant, the three of them came to an extremely mysterious place. This was the hell world that Li Zhongjie had created. However, Li Zhongjie had also directly merged the power of this hell world together, forming an extremely powerful force. Break his realm. The surrounding power made the two Saint Immortals feel very uncomfortable. Immediately, they roared angrily and unleashed the power of their bodies instantly. At the same time, their Yuanli also turned into a giant beast at this moment. With the power of such a giant beast, they wanted to break through the barrier set up by Li Zhongjie. However, no matter how the two giant beasts collided, there was no movement at all. It was as if they had collided with the air. Li Zhongjie appeared in the sky with the matchless sword in his hand. Slash! The unparalleled sword crashed down. It seemed to be condensed with the power of sword chi, which was like rivers returning to the sea, as it fell with the sword chi. The two people below, as well as the giant beasts beside them, felt as if they had sunk into the depths of the sea. The power around them kept rolling and rolling. Rumble! The two giant beasts were severely injured. Under the sword chi, their bodies dissipated. After all, they were in Li Zongjiu's territory, so the strength of these two people was easily suppressed. How is this possible? East-coming sage Immortal's eyes widened in shock. However, it was clear that Li Zongjiu's strength was something that East Rising Sage had not expected. Immediately, a purple sphere of light condensed out from East Rising Sage's hand. It was like a purple sun. Purple sun rises from the east. East Rising Sage threw out the purple sun in his hand, which instantly destroyed the environment in front of him. It collided with Li Zongjiu's sword chi, and the power between them instantly dispersed in all directions. However, Li Zongjiu's body only warmed up a little under this sword, and then he attacked again. This time, the Northern Sky Saint Immortal also used his own strength to resist. Boom! In the space, the power of vibration kept spreading out. It directly caused the surrounding power to become extremely chaotic. It made the two people feel that they were not only dealing with one Li Zongjiu, but also three Li Zongjius at the same time. Evil Soul Eye. Li Zongjiu suddenly moved in front of North Sky Saint Immortal, and forcibly injected the power of the Evil Soul Eye into North Sky Saint Immortal's eyes. North Sky Saint Immortal was stared at by Li Zongjiu. His body instantly stiffened, and he did not move. Then, North Sky Saint Immortal reacted, and tried to break free from Li Zongjiu's control, but it seemed that he did not succeed. This was because Li Zongjiu's mind power was continuously pouring into North Sky Saint Immortal's body, as if countless mind chains were constantly binding North Sky Saint Immortal's mind power. He did not release it. When such power was condensed, North Sky Saint Immortal's mind power also felt incomparable pain and fear. North Sky. East Rising Sage seemed to see that North Sky Saint Immortal's situation was not good, so he immediately roared and rushed forward. Li Zongjiu was performing the mind control technique. For the time being, he could not free himself, and the unparalleled sword in his hand left Li Zongjiu's hand with a whoosh, and attacked East Rising Sage in front of him. Whoosh! The unparalleled sword chi was also extremely fierce. As he continued to attack, Eastern Arrival Sage Immortal could clearly feel the pressure. In the end, Hu Wushuang's figure appeared. Both of his palms were swift and fierce, and with the power of both palms, they quickly enveloped East Rising Sage. Boom! 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 East Rising Sage was constantly forced to retreat. On the other side, Li Zongjiu also quickly completed the process of controlling. When his consciousness retreated, he could see that Li Zongjiu's eyes seemed to be shining. He directly sealed a wisp of North Sky Saint Immortal's mind power in the Evil Soul Eye. At this moment, North Sky Saint Immortal was completely under Li Zongjiu's control. North Sky, wake up quickly! East Rising Sage saw North Sky Saint Immortal's stiff body, and knew that North Sky was now under Li Zongjiu's control. He immediately shouted anxiously. However, it was useless. Go kill him, Li Zongjiu ordered. As soon as his voice fell, North Sky Saint Immortal moved, and slashed at East Rising Sage with the sky-splitting slash. Unparalleled sword flew, and fell back into Li Zongjiu's hand. North Sky, you're crazy! Wake up quickly! East Rising Sage was fighting with North Sky Saint Immortal, while trying to wake North Sky up. Under the situation of 2 against 1, Li Zongjiu could still control North Sky. This showed how terrifying Li Zongjiu's strength was. If North Sky could not be woken up, he would be in real danger. Boom! Li Zongjiu took advantage of the gap and slashed down with his sword. Bang! East Rising was directly sent flying. A dignified Saint Immortal had actually been injured by Li Zongjiu. This was a great humiliation. East Rising Sage Immortal's eyes flashed with a cold light. He immediately clenched his fist and suddenly broke open a space crack behind him. Then he went into the space crack. Li Zongjiu looked at East Rising Sage Immortal's disappearing figure and smirked. You're dead meat. Go to the next level of hell and chase after him. Then Li Zongjiu and North Sky both went into the next level of hell. Although Absolute Saints could move forward with the space storm, Li Zongjiu had already turned the space here into 10 levels of hell. Therefore, no matter how East Rising Sage Immortal tore the space, he could only move through Li Zongjiu's hell world. He would never be able to leave this place. Chapter 1347. Li Zongjio had created the boundless hell technique. It was also because he had unconsciously relaxed that he had created this fighting style. East-coming sage immortal had gone through a lot of hardships to get out of Li Zongjio's realm. However, when he landed, he suddenly realized that he was surrounded by a sea of fire. East-coming sage immortal had gone through a lot of trouble to tear the space apart. Naturally, he would not send himself to such a dangerous place. Hence, when he appeared, East-coming sage immortal realized that something was amiss. This place is still Li Zongjio's realm. How many realms does Li Zongjio have? East-coming sage immortal was shocked. Obviously, he was shocked by Li Zongjio's strength. He did not know where this guy came from, but he was so powerful. Whoosh! North Sky Sage Immortal's North Pole sword moved with sword chi and flew over from afar. Boom! An explosive sword chi swept over. It directly rushed to East-coming Sage Immortal. North Sky. The East-coming Saint Immortal was surrounded by the sword chi, and he struggled to break free. When he broke free, he found that the North Sky Saint Immortal was already in front of him. North Sky. Staring into Beikong Saint Immortal's eyes, Donglai Saint Immortal realized that Beikong's eyes were lifeless. There was no emotion in them. Even though they had cultivated together for hundreds of years, they were like strangers now. They didn't know each other at all. Li Zongjio did not continue to fight with East-coming Sage Immortal. Instead, he returned to the fallen city. As for how long East-coming Sage Immortal could escape from the boundless hell, it was up to him. Plus, North Sky Sage Immortal was chasing after him. It was enough for them to play around in the boundless hell for a few years. It wasn't that easy to kill an absolute saint. What's more, Immortal Dong Lai was actually stronger than Wuxia. If he wanted to kill him completely, he would need some means. Moreover, for Li Zongjio, killing East Rising Sage Immortal would not bring him any benefits. It would be better to borrow East Rising Sage Immortal's strength to perfect his boundless power of hell. The advantages and disadvantages of each area would also be reflected. If he could successfully trap East Rising Sage Immortal in it, it would be a good experience. Li Zongjio returned to Fallen City. Even from afar, he could sense a few terrifying auras sweeping across the horizon. In fact, he could even escape directly from the top of his head. Boom! Li Zongjio felt that one of the auras was familiar. Interesting. Li Zongjio's eyes suddenly lit up. He then placed the unparalleled sword in the array and chased after the auras with a sway of his body. Boom! In the sky ahead, several ferocious forces were chasing after him. From time to time, terrifying collisions would break out. Heaven and Earth Trap. The figures who were chasing after him suddenly burst out with powerful yuan qi and locked down the area in front of them. With a boom, everything was locked down. The person who was running away instantly crashed into the sealed space of heaven and earth. Wang. Powerful fluctuations spread out, but his body was trapped in the same place, and there was no way for him to move. Let's see where you can run to. 5 figures surrounded a black-robed man. Although he was surrounded by 5 people, there was no panic in the black-robed man's eyes, only a hint of ruthlessness. A small carving knife appeared in his hand. He waved the carving knife gently in front of him, releasing a strong aura that gradually condensed the surrounding energy. The Blade of Destiny. Haha, I didn't expect to encounter it in such a situation. Hand over the Blade of Destiny. You're not from the human race. Submit to the Beast God Temple. With your strength, you'll definitely be promoted to an elder in less than 100 years and absorb the power of faith from millions of tribes. Why not? An old man with a pair of goat horns among the 5 tried to persuade the black-robed man. Although they had temporarily trapped the black-robed man, the 5 of them had suffered a lot when they joined forces to deal with him. Therefore, although they had trapped the black-robed man, they had to treat him carefully. Those who stand in my way shall die, the black-robed man said coldly, and didn't respond to the old man's words. The murderous intent in his eyes was also quite fierce. Stubborn. Elder, just kill this man. A mere sage to be can fight with us to this extent. This man's talent is not bad. It's a pity that he can't be used by the Beast God Temple. No matter the price, we must kill you here. The old man with goat horns didn't hold back anymore. However, Just as the 5 of them were about to attack, suddenly, there was a flash of lightning in the sky behind them. Then, a figure quickly appeared in front of these people. His body was wrapped in the power of lightning. He was holding a hammer in his hand. Oh, what a coincidence. I was just about to look for you. And you jumped out on your own. Li Zongjio naturally wouldn't forget the person in front of him. It could even be said that he was absolutely furious. If it wasn't for the person in front of him, he wouldn't have come here. Although he came here by accident and made a breakthrough, it was still a very dangerous act for Li Zongjio. It was Li Zongjio's business to achieve what he had achieved in such a dangerous situation. He could not thank this girl for it. What he really wanted to settle the score with her was that she had forced him, and Qi Yan ran into this situation. It's you. Heavenly Demon Tribe girl Tian Yi's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. Seeing Li Zongjio appear here, Tian Yi couldn't believe it. However, in the current situation, it didn't matter if there was one more Li Zongjio. It was just one more enemy. To Tian Yi, she didn't actually want to kill Li Zongjio and the others. She just wanted to borrow the flying bird platform. However, it was obvious that this had crossed their bottom line. That was why they were hostile towards them. Now there were 5 experts from the Beast God Temple present. How could they let Li Zongjio leave? This stupid Li Zongjio. Could it be that he couldn't see the situation in front of him? It was already like this. Why did he have to jump out and die? Leave quickly. These people will kill you, Tian Yi said in a low voice. Tian Yi said in a deep voice. As for whether Li Zongjio would listen or not, whether he believed it or not, it had nothing to do with Tian Yi. I thought it was a helper. Turns out it's someone who wants to kill you. Haha, little girl. If you join the Beast God Temple now, we can help you get rid of this kid. The old man with the goat horn sneered when he saw Li Zongjio appear. It was as if he had found an opportunity. Therefore, he wanted to use this opportunity to buy Tian Yi's heart. Swoosh. Tian Yi responded to the old man with the goat horn by using the blade of destiny to open a crack behind her. She wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to escape. However, before this crack could stabilize, it was forcefully sealed by an expert from the Beast God Temple. Do it. Don't let this human play tricks. Tian, kill him. The old man with the goat horn ordered. In order to prevent Li Zongjio from causing trouble here, one of them had to deal with Li Zongjio first. Roger. Chapter 1348. The muscular man called Tian also had a pair of steel-like wings on his back. Every feather on his wings was filled with penetrating power. At this moment, his figure flashed, and he appeared in front of Li Zongjio. On the other side, the heavenly monster tribe girl Tian Yi was also fighting with the other 4. If not for the power of the blade of fate in her hand, she would have been caught by the people in front of her. She already had the experience of fighting with the 5 of them. However, at that time, the 5 of them were only in the probing stage. In addition, they were extremely wary of the power of the blade of creation. Hence, they did not suppress her too much. But now, these people were here to take Tian Yi's life and seize the blade of fate by force. Be careful, don't get stabbed by the blade of fate. The old man with the goat horn reminded. If they were stabbed by the blade of fate, the consequences would be unimaginable. Who knows, he might even be crippled. Even with their current strength, if they were to be pierced by the blade of creation, they would definitely be in a lot of trouble, even though they would not die instantly. Due to the fear of the power of the blade of fortune, these people were also very careful in the battle. However, Tian Yi was also in a state of suppression. However, Tian Yi's degree of ferocity was also beyond these people's imagination. As long as there was a slight opportunity, she would launch a crazy attack. Brat, if you want to blame someone, you can only blame your bad luck. Tian laughed loudly, then suddenly attacked Li Zongjio. The wings on his back flapped, and his figure quickly swept towards Li Zongjio. Boom! The eagle claw in his hand had a terrifying power to break through the air, and it grabbed towards Li Zongjio's body. Li Zongjio looked at Tian's attack with a disdainful smile. He grabbed the black dragon hammer in his hand and smashed it forward. Boom! The hammer hit the eagle's claw, forcing it to retreat. The other party grabbed his sharp eagle claw and grimaced. What kind of hammer is this? Ing Tian's claws were already indestructible, and he could easily crush anything that came into contact with them. At this moment, he was actually beaten back by Li Zongjiu's hammer. This caused Eagle Sky to be quite shocked. At the moment of the collision, he felt as if his hand was about to be broken. He had never seen such a powerful weapon before. That's all you got? Li Zongjiu's expression seemed to be somewhat dissatisfied. Obviously, he did not expect the people in front of him to be so weak. He thought that since these people in front of him looked so fierce, they should have some ability. However, he was greatly disappointed. How arrogant. You'll know how powerful I am when I tear your throat apart. Ing Tian roared furiously as the wings on his back began to rotate rapidly. A gust of wind was stirred up in the air. The gust of wind was like a thunderstorm, rolling towards Li Zongjiu. The gust of wind contained an incomparably sharp aura. As it approached, Li Zongjiu frowned slightly. However, Li Zongjiu did not care about the power in front of him at all. With his chaotic body, it was extremely easy for him to walk through such a storm of steel. After blocking the terrifying storm with one hand, Li Zongjiu smashed the black dragon hammer in his hand. Immediately, a wave of frightening strength swiftly spread across the space in front of him. Boom! The power that erupted from the black dragon hammer was extremely terrifying. It almost shattered the space in front of him. The shattered space rumbled and swept towards Ing Tian. Then Ing Tian's body was swept away by the power. What? Ing Tian was immediately hit by the power. The power that hit Ing Tian was none other than Li Zongjiu's fist. The fist directly penetrated Ing Tian's organs. A mere half-saint. How dare you be so impudent in front of me? Li Zongjiu could not help but say. His figure suddenly appeared in front of Ing Tian. His calm words stunned Ing Tian. Before Eagle Sky could react, Li Qia's expression changed. Li Zongjiu's hand had already pierced into the other party's back, immediately tearing out the pair of wings. Whoosh! The wings on Ing Tian's back flew out with blood. Then a few feathers fell to the ground. Eagle Sky let out a low roar of pain as the wings on his back were broken. Ing Tian immediately growled. Although Ing Tian's strength had not reached the level of a true absolute saint, he could still fight against a true absolute saint with his tough physique. However, in front of Li Zongjiu, he was so weak that he could not even withstand a single blow. You dare to touch me? Ing Tian's face was distorted from the pain. He had turned into a real eagle's head. When Li Zongjiu heard that, he directly tore off the other half of Ing Tian's wing. This was extremely painful for the fallen clan. Compared to the pain of a human, it was like the pain of a broken arm. Moreover, Li Zongjiu was quite ruthless. Ing Tian wanted to say something, but he could no longer say it. In the distance, the old man with the goat saw Ing Tian's miserable state and immediately came over. Not good, Ing Tian has been crippled by that person. Old Shi, quickly go and save him. Among the many people, one of them was a fallen clan expert who was proud of his defense. After hearing the order, he immediately roared and quickly returned to where he came from. He threw a punch at Li Zongjiu. Boom! Li Zongjiu also threw a backhand punch and collided with his opponents. The expert in front of him was called Old Shi. He had a rhinoceros horn on his forehead. Obviously, the latter's original body was similar to a rhinoceros. Moreover, the size of the opponent's fist was almost 2 to 3 times larger than Li Zongjiu's. However, after the two fists collided, Old Shi realized that his fist seemed to have hit something incomparably hard. It was several times harder than his fist. He could clearly feel that his fingers were showing signs of breaking. What? Your strength is not bad, but it's still a little weak. The corner of Li Zongjiu's mouth raised slightly. However, when Old Shi looked at Li Zongjiu's eyes, he felt a chill run down his spine. In the next moment, Old Shi saw Li Zongjiu's movement. He actually threw another punch at him. How could he let Li Zongjiu have his way? Again he fought with his fist. In the end there was a bang. Old Shi's entire arm was hit by Li Zongjiu and exploded on the spot. His bones and the like were instantly blown away. Of course, Old Shi was not someone to be trifled with. Fighting relied on the word ruthlessness. Moreover, Old Shi had a unique advantage. He directly hit Li Zongjiu with the horn on his head. If Li Zongjiu was stupid, he would directly hit the opponent with force. However, Li Zongjiu was obviously not stupid. The black dragon hammer in his hand directly hit the incoming rhinoceros horn. Clang! Li Zongjiu's hammer hit, and Old Qi instantly became dizzy. Chapter 1349. Of course, Old Qi's rhinoceros horn was not bad either. Although Li Zongjiu's black dragon hammer was quite powerful, Old Qi's rhinoceros horn was not just for decoration. This was the first time he was almost knocked out in a head-on collision. However, Old Qi immediately shook his head and forcefully stabilized his body. My heavenly golden horn is indestructible. No matter how powerful you are, you still won't be able to break my heavenly golden horn. Old Qi immediately roared, as if he was angered by Li Zongjiu. Of course, Li Zongjiu did not give Old Qi any chance to show off. He directly held the black dragon hammer in his hand and swept it over madly again. One hammer after another fell, until the fifth hammer fell. A crack suddenly appeared on Old Qi's heaven golden horn that he was so proud of. This immediately shocked Old Qi. At the same time, he felt quite frightened. What kind of rhythm was this? His heaven golden horn was actually broken. If this continued, it might really be broken by Li Zongjiu. This natural ability was also Old Qi's unique trait. If he was directly broken by Li Zongjiu, his future days would definitely not be easy. Old Qi hurriedly retreated. I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight anymore. Old Qi's body retreated and his mouth kept begging for mercy. When the goat-horned old man heard Old Qi's begging voice, the other two people were shocked. They did not expect this kid, who came out of nowhere, to be so powerful. He defeated two experts in a row. Even Old Qi was beaten to the point where he covered his head and ran away, begging for mercy again and again. You think you can stop just because you say so? Li Zongjiu did not come here to play house. What's more, these people in front of him were people from the Beast God Temple. Li Zongjiu killed so many people from the Beast God Temple that it was impossible to reconcile in the future. The only way was to kill these people and eradicate the Beast God Temple, which was equivalent to solving the problem. Now that Li Zongjiu finally met 5 people who were alone, how could he let them go? From the moment Li Zongjiu arrived, he did not want to let these people leave alive. Myriad Thunderbolt. Li Zongjiu raised the black dragon hammer in his hand and suddenly smashed down the terrifying power of thunder and lightning. Old Qi's face turned deathly pale when he sensed the power of the lightning descending upon him. The rumbling power of thunder and lightning attracted the goat-horned old man. At the same time, Tianyi found an opportunity to use the blade of fortune in her hand and quickly sent one of them flying. The remaining 2 people realized that they had underestimated Li Zongjiu and Tianyi. These 2 people looked very young, but in fact, each one was more powerful than the other. The human looked like he was in his teens, maybe even less than 20 years old. They did not expect him to have such powerful strength. Even the Saint Immortals in the Sacred Mountain could not have such strength to beat Old Qi like this. When the thunder and lightning fell, Old Qi was no longer arrogant. Under the terrifying power of the thunder and lightning, the heavenly golden horn on his head directly shattered. When the heavenly golden horn shattered, it was equivalent to his brain being split open. Therefore, Old Qi's body directly fell from the sky. He quickly fell to the ground. No one knew whether he was alive or dead. And the birdman who had 2 wings torn off, at this moment, no one knew where he went. He should have fallen directly. Fate Dragon Sparrow. Suddenly, in Tianyi's hand in the sky, directly condensed a terrifying power with the blade of fortune. An extremely huge heavenly demon dragon sparrow emerged, and its huge body instantly entangled the goat-horned old man in front of it. The remaining person obviously could not pose a threat to Tianyi and Li Zongjiu. Boy, quickly run. Once they transform, their strength will definitely increase by several times. You and I together will definitely not be a match for them. Tianyi's tone was still quite cold, although she and Li Zongjiu were in a state of hostility. After all, when they were in the Sky Suspension Mountain, they fought with their lives on the line. It was obviously impossible to sit down and have a good chat about the current situation. But today, If Li Zongjio hadn't appeared and held back the two experts of the opposing side one by one, and eliminated the two experts of the opposing side, Tian-Yi would not have a chance to escape. Therefore, after escaping, Tian-Yi also shouted at Li Zongjio, wanting to let Li Zongjio understand the situation, and not be deceived by the current weakness of these people. In fact, the current state of these people was a relatively casual posture, and they even deliberately hid their strength. Now, if they really transformed, their power was still quite terrifying. It was not something they could resist now. Moreover, their moves might not be able to stop the strongest goat-horned old man. Escape? I am the great evil lord Li Zongjio. Do I need to escape? Li Zongjio's face suddenly became arrogant, and he said with extreme disdain. Did he really think that he was a person who could give up everything for his life? Did he actually want the great evil lord to escape? Instead of dealing with the enemy, he was thinking of running away. This kind of thinking was simply too laughable. However, when Tian-Yi heard Li Zongjio's words, she couldn't help but roll her eyes in her stomach. What a shameless person. She was really forgetful. If it weren't for the fact that you had to touch that damn transmission array and wanted to escape, she, Tian-Yi, would not have fallen into such a situation. Now she was still being chased to such a place. Otherwise, Tian-Yi would have already completed the mission of continuing her race. How could such a situation happen? For Tian-Yi, Li Zongjio also had a lot to do with her being chased. Even this debt should be settled with Li Zongjio. Since Li Zongjio refused to leave, Tian-Yi knew that time was running out. Hence, she decided to rush out and head towards the front. Boom! But Tian-Yi's figure rushed out not long ago. Logically speaking, this distance was enough for Tian-Yi to escape to a relatively safe place. She could even reorganize and then come back. But just as Tian-Yi was about to leave, where Li Zongjio was, 5 terrifying auras directly erupted one after another. Even the clouds in the sky had become blood red. Bloody wind and rain. Extremely terrifying power was condensing. In front of Li Zongjio, 5 huge beasts appeared. Chapter 1350. These 5 behemoths had their feet on the ground and their heads in the sky. The clouds were only around their necks. Such a figure could be clearly seen even from miles away. Li Zongjio was surrounded by these behemoths. Interesting. You're finally getting serious. Li Zongjio naturally knew that these people had the ability to transform. However, the true transformation of the Absolute Saint Realm would increase their strength by many times. Even Ying Tian and Old Shi, who had been severely injured by Li Zongjio, had transformed into their true forms. Now, they had transformed into their true forms, and the injuries they had sustained earlier had already disappeared. Compared to such a huge body, the little injury caused to me just now was nothing. Roar! Ying Tian, who had transformed into a dark blood eagle, also roared at Li Zongjio. If the anger in his eyes could be spat out, it would at least stretch for tens of thousands of feet. It was obvious how much he wanted to tear Li Zongjio into pieces. The other rhinoceros was also standing on the mountain. Just this leg alone was like a real pillar that could hold up the sky. However, the heavenly golden horn on its head, which should have pierced through the mountains and rivers, sun and moon. At this moment, half of it was broken. At this moment, the heavenly golden rhinoceros also wanted to smash Li Zongjio into meat paste, then put him on the ground and trample him into meat paste. Its front feet kept digging on the ground. Because of this action, it directly dug the nearby soil into an extremely vast lake. Then, the lake was quickly filled with water. Such a huge commotion was all because of this huge body. There was also a goat. Just the beard of the goat alone was like a waterfall hanging high in the sky. Beside the goat, there were 2 more strange beasts. It was hard to describe, but in terms of appearance, they were similar to ordinary wild wolves. However, they had more sharp teeth. They were very wild. They trapped Li Zongjio in front of them. It seemed that in the eyes of these 5 beasts, Li Zongjio was just a very small fly that could be easily swatted to death. This idiot, Tian-Yi, who had already fled thousands of miles away, turned back and saw these huge beasts. When she saw the fallen tribe revealing their true forms, Tian-Yi knew that Li Zongjio was doomed. This human was truly blindly arrogant. Whoosh! Tiani actually rushed towards the 5 giant beasts again. She returned to Li Zongjio's side. Li Zongjio also looked at the heavenly monster tribe in surprise. You are a monster. Why did you run back? Li Zongjio looked at Tian-yi and couldn't help but say. Obviously, Li Zongjio was also very surprised that this Tian-yi actually knew to come back after running away. Heavenly demon tribe doesn't owe favors. Tian-yi said coldly. She didn't look at Li Zongjio. Instead, she stared at the white goat in front of her. Except for this goat, the rest are all half-step saints. You block the 4 of them. I will deal with this goat. After that, we will fight our way out of this encirclement together. Tiani said in a deep voice. Now that things had come to this point, there was nothing more to say. Even if they had fought before, and there were still some grudges between them. But now that the enemy was in front of them, there was no need to be so calculative. Li Zongjio, on the other hand, didn't care at all. Although the other party had the advantage in numbers, it wasn't something that could be solved with numbers. No matter how many people there were, they were all trash. What was the use? Then you go first. Li Zongjio wasn't in a hurry. Tiani didn't understand what Li Zongjio meant. Did he still want to leave alive? Immediately, Tian-yi used the Blade of Fortune again. Although she didn't know much about Li Zongjio didn't seem like a person who would throw his life away. In that case, she would cooperate with him and believe in Li Zongjio for the time being. Boom! A power that shook both the past and present rose from the blade of creation. It was as if the heavens were a drum that was being beaten violently. Very soon, an extremely terrifying vibration could be heard from the drumbeats. As the voice faded, it was as if the sky had been knocked. Countless meteors and fiery rain fell from the sky, rapidly falling downwards. Boom! The white goat raised its head. It was the same move again. Bah! The white goat opened its mouth and made a sound. Apparently it was giving an order. However, because it was an incarnation of its body, it couldn't speak human language. They could only use their own language to communicate. Who would have thought that this low roar would directly destroy the originally ferocious atmosphere? Although its body was extremely huge and terrifying, its voice was still as soft as a sheep's. It felt weird just listening to it. Following the white goat's order, 3 of the giant beasts attacked Li Zongjio at the same time. The remaining one fought with the white goat against Tian-yi. Currently, Tian-yi's cultivation was only equivalent to a sage-to-be. If Tian-yi changed into her original form, she could directly reach the sage-to-be realm. However, unless it was absolutely necessary, she wouldn't reveal her original form. Because if she returned to her original form too many times, she would be unable to change her original form. If he wanted to change back, he would be even more unrecognizable. In the end, it would be difficult for him to change back into a human appearance. Naturally, she would lose the chance to change back into her original form. She would also lose many chances to change back into her original form. When such a situation occurred, come on! Li Zongjio raised the black dragon hammer in his hand and rushed towards the rhinoceros in front of him. The sky gold rhinoceros was unhappy. What was this guy trying to do? Why did he have to pick on me, a soft persimmon? Let's see who the soft persimmon is. Boom! This time, the sky gold rhinoceros was ruthless. It didn't care about the consequences and directly charged towards Li Zongjio. Li Zongjio smashed his hammer on the rhinoceros's head. Instantly, there was a loud noise. The sky gold rhinoceros's huge body was instantly sent flying backwards. When he was sent flying, the mountains, rivers, and plants on the ground were in trouble. Some of the mountains were directly razed to the ground. The trees were directly crushed into pieces. Even if you changed into your original form, your strength didn't increase by much. You can't do it. Not only did Li Zongjio defeat the rhinoceros, he even humiliated the rhinoceros. It made the rhinoceros feel ashamed. Immediately, the sky gold rhinoceros turned around. However, it continued to attack and saw the dark blood eagle flapping its wings. It clawed towards Li Zongjio. Boom! This claw caused the wind and clouds to surge. Chapter 1351. As the claw descended, it seemed to have clawed a hole in the sky. Li Zongjio waved the black dragon hammer in his hand, and the power of lightning surged. Rumble! The terrifying lightning energy seemed to have swallowed up the dark blood figure. The lightning was like a berserk figure, as it rapidly swept across the dark blood eagle's body, churning and surging violently. The dark blood eagle was directly sent flying. Its belly fell to the sky. Although its body had changed a lot, its strength was not beyond Li Zongjio's expectation. After all, his original body had just reached the absolute saint realm. The other figure was like a wild wolf, but the sharp teeth in its mouth were almost twice the size of its head. Under such an imposing aura, when the dark blood eagle was sent flying, the huge fallen wolf stabbed its sharp teeth at Li Zongjio angrily. The surging power. Li Zongjio was surprised. You have some skills. Li Zongjio threw the black dragon hammer in his hand, and it hit the dark blood eagle's head, knocking it out. At the same time, Li Zongjio grabbed the sharp teeth with both hands. Break! Li Zongjio raised his fist and smashed down on the sharp teeth. Bang! His teeth were directly broken, and he fell from the sky like a sharp sword falling from the sky, piercing the sky and directly penetrating a mountain below. The fallen wolf howled in pain after its teeth were broken by Li Zongjio. Mountain-flipping golden seal. Li Zongjio used the mountain-flipping golden seal and smashed the fallen wolf's head into the ground with a loud bang. When the fallen wolf's head was deeply embedded into the ground, it was difficult for him to pull his head out even when he was flipping his body. Hammer. Li Zongjio opened his palm, and the black dragon hammer flew from afar into Li Zongjio's hand. Raising the black dragon hammer in his hand, he summoned obsidian lightning from the sky. He fell towards the fallen wolf. Boom! The fallen wolf's head was instantly blasted into pieces by this terrifying thunderbolt. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere. A large group of the fallen race had fallen. Roar! The heavenly gold rhino also stood up. He finally regained the ability to move, and immediately rushed toward Li Zongjio in a frenzy. On the other hand, Li Zongjio's hand seals were flying. Buddha palm. A 7-storied pagoda descended from the sky. It directly broke the heavenly gold rhino from its waist. As the heavenly golden rhino ran, it was also forced to fall to the ground. Its flesh and blood gushed out like a waterfall and fell to the ground. The dark blood eagle also flapped its wings. After it got up, it realized that its 2 companions had been killed by Li Zongjio. At this moment, Li Zongjio must be in a frenzied state. Then, the dark blood eagle saw that the situation was not good, so it directly flew away. It did not even want to take revenge for the humiliation from before. Right now, the most important thing was to protect its own life. As for the white goat and the other fallen divine beast, it was up to fate whether they could survive or not. Anyway, the dark blood eagle had already made up its mind to escape. Space seal. Li Zongjio casually waved his hand. Li Zongjio was actually able to use the spatial sealing technique that the goat-horned old man had used before. Obviously, Li Zongjio was also good at this kind of technique. He only needed to see it once to know how to perform it. The dark blood eagle was trapped in the space that Li Zongjio had sealed. Immediately, it was very anxious. In the end, it actually burst out its life skill, wanting to directly shatter the sealed space in front of it. However, in the space after it was broken, a blood-red dragon figure descended from the sky. The dragon claw clasped the dark blood eagle's neck. The 5 claws pierced into the dark blood eagle's flesh and directly lifted its head. The pitiful dark blood eagle was beheaded just like that. On the other side, Li Zongjio had already killed the 3 fallen giant beasts. The blade of fate in Tianyi's hand also became more powerful. At the same time, it also chopped off the head of the other fallen giant beast that came to assist. Originally, Tianyi wanted to trap the 2 of them and then break out of the encirclement with Li Zongjio. In her opinion, that was not a difficult thing to do. However, when Tianyi looked back, she realized that Li Zongjio had easily finished the battle. He had killed the other 3 fallen giant beasts. Then she changed her strategy. Today, she had to kill the 2 fallen giant beasts. After all, these people had been chasing her for a long time and wanted to snatch the blade of fate in her hand. Naturally, she could not let these people go back alive. Now that there was a chance, she had to kill them. The goat transformed by the goat horn old man had the ability to swallow clouds and spit out fog. With a slight movement, it released clouds of poisonous gas. It made the surrounding environment look like it was in a fog. Tiani transformed the man of fate into the power of the wings behind her. Boom! Tiani rushed out of the foggy environment with the help of the wings of fate behind her. When she rushed out, he also saw that the white sheep was charging towards Tiani with its horns. Tiani stepped on the goat horn. However, the speed of the opponent's attack made Tiani unable to attack at all. The wings behind her could not keep up with the opponent's speed. Bang! Tiani was directly sent flying. Her figure flew tens of thousands of meters in the sky, breaking through countless clouds. In the end, she slowly came to a stop. You are dead for going against the beast god temple. She did not expect the goat to be able to speak when it transformed into its original form. No wonder it was a true absolute saint. The other fallen giant beasts could not master this ability. Li Zhongjiu rose into the sky. He looked at the fallen giant beasts in front of him, as if nothing had happened. You don't have to worry about me. Die in peace. As soon as he finished speaking, Li Zhongjiu stepped on the golden dragon. The golden dragon's huge body instantly spread out. His current size was several times larger than when he had fought with Tianyi. Naturally, his strength had also increased correspondingly, making him even more powerful. The blood dragon roared, and as its huge body twisted, it instantly swept towards the white goat. The two giant beasts collided, exploding with terrifying fluctuations. The blood dragon rolled, trying to turn the fallen giant beast's body around. However, the fallen giant beast's 4 legs were like mountains. In addition to its powerful aura, it was not shaken by the blood dragon. In the end, the blood dragon bit the fallen giant beast's neck. The fallen giant beast's body crashed to the ground. At this moment, the golden dragon turned into a ray of golden light. Boom! The consecutive heavy injuries made the fallen giant beasts retreat. The power that Li Zhongjiu's 2 original spirits exploded out was not weak at all. After the fallen giant beasts was forced to retreat, it also struggled to escape. It turned out that Li Zhongjiu had not been serious from the beginning. Now that he was serious, there was no longer any hope. Chapter 1352. At this moment, there were already many huge wounds on the white sheep's body. Under the attack of the 2 Dragon Clan original spirits, the fallen white sheep couldn't resist at all. Although it wanted to break free, the more it fought, the weaker its strength became. It didn't have enough strength to break free. At this moment, Tiani flew back from afar. Looking at the scene in front of her, she was stunned. She didn't expect Li Zhongjiu to kill the white sheep so easily. He didn't even need to do anything himself. Just the original spirits were enough to deal with the white sheep. However, Tiani could clearly see that Li Zhongjiu's strength had made a great breakthrough. Before this, Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran teamed up to deal with Tiani. It was extremely difficult for them. However, in just a few months, Tianyi's strength had improved greatly. Li Zhongjiu had such a powerful breakthrough and change. It was unimaginable. Rumble. Finally, the white sheep died under the entanglement of the golden dragon original spirit and the blood dragon original spirit. It was easily torn into pieces. It didn't even have a chance to escape. At the level of the Absolute Saint realm, it was naturally easy to kill those below the Absolute Saint realm. However, Li Zhongjiu seemed to have mastered the means to kill Absolute Saints. After a few exchanges, he easily defeated these people. He was almost an invincible existence. Of course, Li Zhongjiu's strength was much stronger than these people. That was why he could kill them so easily. It seemed reasonable for Li Zhongjiu to kill the 5 fallen beasts. After all, Li Zhongjiu had enough strength to kill them. Initially, he wanted to test the skills of these people. But he didn't expect that even after transforming, these people were still so weak. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu lost interest and killed them all. Tiani looked at Li Zhongjiu with a shocked expression. She didn't expect Li Zhongjiu to be so powerful. Tiani thought that Li Zhongjiu had a breakthrough in the sacred martial realm, so it was normal for his strength to increase. However, she didn't expect Li Zhongjiu to be so powerful that he could kill the 5 fallen beasts. Obviously, Even if Tianyi didn't come back to help Li Zhongjiu could easily kill them all. Tianyi's action was a little unnecessary. Li Zhongjiu took back his black dragon hammer. Li Zhongjiu put away the corpses of the fallen beasts. There was still a 10,000 slaughter sword lying in his hell world. He could use the blood of these fallen beasts to nurture the myriad slaughter sword in his hand. Now that I've settled their score, it's time to settle our score. Li Zhongjiu came back this time to find trouble with Tianyi. Tianyi was the one who did such a thing. Li Zhongjiu certainly had to teach Tianyi a lesson. How do you want to settle it? Tianyi's mouth glinted coldly. Since Li Zhongjiu didn't need her help at all, it was equivalent to her walking into a trap. She didn't expect to walk into a tiger's mouth after leaving the wolf's den. This made Tianyi quite helpless in her heart. However, an enemy was an enemy after all. Even if she knew someone else, their attitude was still the same. If he didn't let her live, it would only make things difficult for everyone. The heavenly demon dragon Sparrow was not so cowardly. Originally, you were going to die, but since you still have a little conscience and know to come back, I can spare your life for the time being. Li Zhongjiu said indifferently. Although the other party was a girl, Li Zhongjiu didn't have much mercy in his eyes. Being kind to the enemy was being cruel to oneself. Especially now that the heavenly demon dragon Sparrow's strength hadn't improved greatly. The blade of destiny in her hand was also at the same level as Qi Yanran's green bird platform. Qi Yanran didn't even use the green bird platform as skillfully as the blade of destiny. It could be seen that the other party's strength was even more terrifying. She might have limitless achievements in the future. If he allowed such an enemy to grow, he would be the unlucky one in the end. However, Li Zhongjiu saw that the other party had turned back and didn't leave. This was a bit of loyalty. Li Zhongjiu considered sparing her life. Evil Lord's character was so unpredictable. Tianyi didn't say anything. She continued to wait for Li Zhongjiu's next words. Tianyi knew that with Li Zhongjiu's character, he wouldn't let her have an easy time. Even if he made some demands, Tianyi might not be able to humbly satisfy them. Since you wanted to snatch the green bird platform last time, I'll fulfill your wish this time. Hand over your blade of destiny. Li Zhongjiu said indifferently. As expected, Tianyi's eyes shone with a cold light. Tianyi would never allow anyone to snatch the blade of fate from her. The blade of fate in her hand was the inheritance of the entire heavenly monster tribe. If it was snatched away, it would be tantamount to severing her inheritance. Don't even think about it. Tianyi refused without hesitation. If he wanted to snatch it away by force, the only way was to fight to the death. It seems like you still don't understand the current situation. Li Zhongjiu shook his head as a cold smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. Let's fight. Tianyi wasn't afraid. In her heart, she had already decided to fight to the death. If he wanted to snatch the blade of destiny, there was only one outcome, and that was to kill her. All right, then I'll send you on your way. Li Zhongjiu took out the black dragon hammer. Li Zhongjiu was very interested in the blade of destiny. Since he was interested, he would take it and admire it. Tianyi never thought that Li Zhongjiu would let her go so easily. Even Tianyi herself had a firm determination. She had to rely on herself for everything. As the last person of the heavenly demon tribe, it wasn't easy for Tianyi to survive until now. In order to protect the blade of destiny in her hand, she had gone back and forth between life and death several times. Therefore, Tianyi would never give up. However, Li Zhongjiu's strength was unprecedented. In his hands, the 5 giant fallen beasts were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. They were easily killed. If it were her, she might have had a similar effect. Li Zhongjiu was about to attack. Suddenly, he sensed a message from the unparalleled sword in the fallen city. His face suddenly changed. You're courting death. Li Zhongjiu immediately gave up attacking Tianyi. He turned around and rushed towards the fallen city. Boom! Li Zhongjiu's speed was beyond Tianyi's imagination. With such speed, how terrifying was Li Zhongjiu's strength? However, why did Li Zhongjiu suddenly leave? This made Tianyi a little confused. However, since the troublesome Li Zhongjiu had left, Tianyi didn't need to stay here. Otherwise, if Li Zhongjiu came back, she would lose such a great opportunity. Tiani didn't hesitate and fled in another direction. Chapter 1353. In the sky above Fallen City, the infernal hell flower bloomed continuously. Huo Wushuang appeared in the unparalleled sword. He was using his spiritual energy to activate the array around him to stop a person. The person was stepping on the clouds. He held the waterfall spear in his hand. The tip of the spear was pointing downward, and the terrifying power of a waterfall poured down crazily. Rumble! The water fell on the infernal lotus array and absorbed the power of the infernal lotus array. One could see that Huo Wushuang was doing his best. In the city below, there was another person who was currently defeating Jiang Bai, and the others. It was Shen Wu, who was severely injured but had regained consciousness. When Shen Wu woke up, he found that his Eastern Arrival Sage Immortal and Northern Sky Sage Immortal were not nearby. Even that damned brat Li Zongjia was nowhere to be seen. Shen Wu immediately felt that something was definitely wrong. He wanted to leave immediately and take Yu Luo to treat her injuries. However, he was stopped by the unparalleled sword. He was completely trapped in the city and couldn't leave. Shen Wu had no choice but to release a signal and summon his father, the Guardian Duke of the Great Wu Dynasty. As the Guardian Duke of the Great Wu Dynasty, as long as his opponent wasn't a Saint Immortal, he could fight them. Moreover, the waterfall spear in his hand was made with the materials of the sacred mountain. He might be able to reach the Saint Immortal realm in the future with the help of the waterfall spear. Huo Wushuang's strength hadn't recovered yet, and he was suppressed by the power of his attribute. Of course, it wouldn't be easy for him to break into Fallen City. You're just a sword spirit. Shen Tianlu stared at Huo Wushuang with a look of disbelief in his eyes. He never thought that Huo Wushuang, who was so powerful, was just a spirit. If I can refine a sword, I'll be able to reach the absolute saint realm. Shen Tianlu was tempted. This time, he was really tempted. How could he not be tempted by such a powerful peerless sword in front of him? He had been stuck in this realm for many years, and had not been able to make any progress. Now that he finally had a chance to make a breakthrough, how could he give up just like that? If he wanted to break through now, he would have to borrow the power of the outside world. In other words, he had to combine it with his own origin energy to achieve a true breakthrough. Although the waterfall spear in his hands was top-notch, it was still an inanimate object. If he could obtain this unparalleled sword, it would be an opportunity for Shen Tianlu to change his fate. Shen Tianlu's eyes were filled with excitement. The waterfall spear in his hand instantly surged with power. Boom! Power surged out. It was as if the water of a great river had descended from the sky and covered the sun. Qi! 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 An extremely strong steam phenomenon appeared in the sky above the Fallen City. However, with the appearance of this steam, Huo Wushuang's strength was also rapidly draining. The other party was going all out, wanting to directly exhaust Huo Wushuang's strength. Oh no! The power of the unparalleled sword is about to be exhausted. Jiang Bai and the others were seriously injured. Even if they were to face a severely injured Shen Wu, they would still be no match for him. However, the unparalleled sword urgently needed their help at this moment. Li Zongjia's whereabouts were unknown. However, he should be in a situation. Otherwise he would have appeared by now. In such a critical moment, they naturally had to step forward bravely. Otherwise, once they were in danger, they would become useless if they relied on others to help them. Therefore, under such a dangerous situation, Jiang Bai and Chu Yanguan were also fighting with their lives on the line against Shen Wu. As long as they could take down Shen Wu, the people outside the array would naturally not dare to act rashly. Go! The two women once again climbed up from the ruins, and suddenly rushed toward Shen Wu. Boom! Shen Wu also waved his hand casually, and two waves of energy blasted the two women away again. The gap between our realms is like the gap between an ant and a god. How can you overcome it? Shen Wu said faintly. There was a sense of supreme glory in his tone. Just as Shen Wu was about to kill the two of them, a cold light flashed past. Boom! The unparalleled sword instantly pierced through Shen Wu's body. Bang! Shen Wu knelt on the ground. The sword piercing through his heart made Shen Wu feel as if he was struck by lightning. Puff! Shen Wu spat out a mouthful of blood. However, this sword strike wasn't fatal. Shen Wu was also wearing a top-notch inner armor, which protected his vital points. Jiang Bai flipped over and stood up again. Finally, she was able to get close to Shen Wu and directly tied him up. Chu Yanguan also used Yuan Li to suppress Shen Wu. Chu Yanguan's strength gradually surpassed Jiang Bai's. After all, he had received many pointers from Qi Yanran before. The two of them worked together to trap Shen Wu. The tip of the sword was hanging above Shen Wu's head. The two of them stared at the sky again, trying to threaten Shen Tianlu. However, Shen Tianlu only glanced at them. How dare an ant try to fight against a holy master? Shen Tianlu sneered when he saw this. Then he suddenly released the power in his hand. Boom! A stream of water power directly shook outside the array formation. Even though there was a barrier between them, it still easily sent the two of them flying. Bang! Bang! Jiang Bai and Chu Yanguan were sent flying once again. Both of their injuries were already very serious. How dare you hurt my child with a mere demonic sword? I'll refine you today. Shen Tianlu knew that there was no time to lose. He immediately took an elixir and recovered 50% of his Yuan Li. Then, he released the remaining 50% of his Yuan Li. The tyrannical power instantly broke Huo Wushuang's formation. At the same time, his body suddenly stretched forward and grabbed Huo Wushuang's neck. How about that? No matter how strong you were when you were alive, you can only become a ghost under my hands now. Shen Tianlu laughed when he captured Huo Wushuang. It was as if victory was already in his hands, and he could already see the light of victory. However, just as Shen Tianlu was about to use his Yuan Li to devour Huo Wushuang, suddenly, Shen Tianlu felt a chill on his back. It was as if something terrifying was staring at him. Ever since he became the Great Wu's guardian duke, it had been a long time since he had felt this way. Only when the oppression from an extremely strong existence was full of hostility would he feel like he had fallen into an ice cellar. It made him rather fearful. Who's there? Shen Tianlu shouted. The Yuan Li in his body instantly exploded. Immediately, a terrifying power spread out in all directions. Boom! You must be tired of living. A cold voice rang out behind Shen Tianlu's ear. However, how could someone get close to him so easily? This must be an illusion. It was mind power. Chapter 1354. Shen Tianlu's body stiffened as well. He felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar, unable to move at all. The power around him was as cold and merciless as 10,000-year-old ice. It directly froze Shen Tianlu's bloodline. Every breath he took was extremely bone-piercing. It was as if sharp ice blades were scraping his body. Shen Tianlu was alarmed by the clear pain he felt. Illusion! It must be an illusion! Shen Tianlu broke out in a cold sweat, and then opened his eyes. There was a cold light in his eyes. The scene in front of him also returned to normal. He saw a young man in a black robe in the air, standing not far away from him. He was holding the unparalleled sword, which originally belonged to him, and seemed to be saying something to the unparalleled sword. My sword! No one is allowed to touch it. Shen Tianlu saw that his weapon had been taken away by someone who had come. In his rage, he did not care about anything else. In the entire sacred martial realm, only a few divine immortals from the sacred mountain could surpass him in strength. As for the others, he did not care at all. There was nothing to talk about. Let's fight. Once I kill you, I'll know who's the real master here. Waterfall flow. Shen Tianlu suddenly raised the waterfall spear in his hand. At this moment, it was like 1,000 miles of cold light, directly descending on Li Zongjio. The power of this cold light alone was enough to easily destroy a city. There was no suspense. However, Li Zongjio did not dodge the power that was descending on him. He just stood there, as if he was going to let his opponent attack him. Boom! All the cold air condensed in front of Li Zongjio, but did not get close to Li Zongjio. It seemed to be blocked by a strong force. Shen Tianlu saw that his attack had been forcibly blocked by Li Zongjio. His heart skipped a beat. How could he have such a strong aura? How could this be? Li Zongjio, on the other hand, let out a cold laugh amidst the tide. You call yourself a celestial master? This is your strength, Li Zhongjiu said calmly. Shen Tianlu was shocked. He calmly received the attack. However, whether he was really calm or just pretending to be calm, he would only know after a few more attacks. Let's see how long you can pretend, Shen Tianlu bellowed as the waterfall spear in his hands shot towards Li Zhongjiu. It seemed to have turned into a water dragon as it surged towards Li Zhongjiu. The originally clear sky had now turned into a huge wave in the deep sea. Thousands of layers of huge waves rolled up, and in an instant, Li Zhongjiu felt like he was about to be swallowed whole. Is this the ultimate move you're so proud of? Li Zhongjiu stared at the river-turning flood dragon in front of him. The light on the unparalleled sword gradually surged. When the opponent rushed over, Li Zhongjiu took advantage of the opportunity to swing the unparalleled sword in his hand. The sword chi instantly slashed the body of the flood dragon. Boom! The flood dragon was instantly torn apart. It exploded on the spot. Shen Tianlu's strongest attack had been directly broken at this moment. Shen Tianlu was immediately severely injured. The backlash of the origin energy in his body also made Shen Tianlu realize that he was no match for the person in front of him. If he continued to fight, he would only die. The only way was to escape. As an expert, he knew how to protect his own life and prevent himself from dying so early. There was only hope if he was alive. Even as the Great Wu Dynasty's duke, he had to be alive to be a Great Wu Dynasty's duke. If he died, he would be nothing. However, would Shen Tianlu be able to escape just because he wanted to? Li Zhongjiu waved his hand casually, and a force directly trapped Shen Tianlu in this space. The spatial confinement force from all around made Shen Tianlu feel powerless. It seemed that he was still in this free environment, but in fact he was completely trapped. The terrifying confinement around him made Shen Tianlu unable to move at all. There was no chance for him to escape. Who are you? He finally realized the gap in power between himself and Li Zhongjiu. Immediately, Shen Tianlu's eyes released a ray of fear. There weren't many people who could reach this level of cultivation, and those who could easily restrain him were few and far between. So who was Li Zhongjiu in front of him? Could it be that Li Zhongjiu was a newly promoted Saint Immortal? My Shen family and East Rising Saint Immortal are old friends. Your Excellency, please let me go for East Rising Saint Immortal's sake. Shen Tianlu immediately began to beg for mercy. In his opinion, there was nothing shameful about this. Although Li Zhongjiu looked young, he was very powerful. If he did not surrender, only death would await him. What was so shameful about surrendering to an expert? East Rising Saint Immortal? Bullshit. Li Zhongjiu directly slapped out across the space. It felt like bullying to deal with a person who had not even reached the absolute saint realm. However, Li Zhongjiu liked to bully people. Shen Tianlu, didn't you use your strength to do whatever you want here? Now, I'll let you have a taste of being bullied. Li Zhongjiu's palm directly hit Shen Tianlu's body, and he was instantly sent flying. Shen Tianlu fell toward fallen city below. Boom! He crashed into a house, and the surrounding ground immediately collapsed. Shen Tianlu was like a cannonball that directly smashed into the ground. The surrounding dust rose up, covering the sky and the sun. Li Zhongjiu's body landed on the ground. He gently flicked his finger, and two figures on the ground were lifted up. They were Chu Yin and Guan Jiang, who were seriously injured. Although they were seriously injured, and seemed to be hanging on to their last breath, Li Zhongjiu directly injected a strong wave of origin energy into their bodies. With Li Zhongjiu's current cultivation, there was no one he could not save. After injecting origin energy, Chu Yin and Guan Jiang's injuries were healed, and they regained their strength. When they saw Li Zhongjiu, they were pleasantly surprised. Senior, you've worked hard. Naturally, Li Zhongjiu could tell what the two of them were doing. Immediately, he gave each of them an elixir. It was a grade 9 elixir. Even for Supreme Being experts, it was a precious elixir. Even if Li Zhongjiu casually gave out elixirs, some Supreme Being experts would not be able to obtain it even if they spent their entire lives pursuing it. Jiang Bai and Guan Jiang looked at the elixir in their hands. Although they did not know the specific grade of the elixir, they definitely knew that the value of the elixir in their hands was absolutely immeasurable. Opportunity. This was a real opportunity. As long as they obtained this opportunity, they could at least speed up their breakthrough and speed up their cultivation. It would save them a few decades of hard work, or even hundreds of years. The opportunity that Li Zongjio had bestowed upon him was this powerful. He glanced at Shen Wu, who was in a half-dead state. Li Zongjio's lips curled into a cold smile. He gently waved his hand and led Shen Wu to his front. Then, he injected a stream of origin energy into Shen Wu's body. Shen Wu's body was immediately saved. It was as if he had received a life-prolonging elixir, and he instantly woke up. "It's you, Li Zongjio." When Shen Wu woke up, he looked at Li Zongjio in disbelief. Then, he saw Li Zongjio pull out a person from the ruins. It was Shen Wu's father, the Great Wu Empire's Duke Shen Tianlu. Shen Wu's eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets. "Li Zongjio, if you dare to touch my father, you will become an enemy of the Great Wu Empire. There are hundreds of heavenly masters in the Great Wu Empire, and they are enough to destroy you tens of thousands of times." Chapter 1355. Hearing Shen Wu's threat, Li Zongjio seemed to be afraid and stopped his actions. Seeing this, Shen Wu's eyes were slightly surprised. Now he knows fear. "If you let him go now, I can spare your life. But in the future, you must serve my Great Wu dynasty. In that case, not only will you not have to die, I can also guarantee that you will live a life of luxury," Shen Wu said. No one knew where his confidence came from, but he actually wanted to subdue Li Zongjio. Even if there was a plate of peanuts last night when he was drinking, he shouldn't have been so drunk. Either his injuries had recovered, but his brain couldn't be saved. "You're saying that you'll let me live and give me a life of luxury, right?" Li Zongjio asked. He took a serious look at Shen Wu, who was in front of him. Even until now, this child probably still doesn't know where the two Saint Immortal Realm experts, who had just arrived, have gone. "That's right. My Great Wu dynasty can let bygones be bygones." Shen Wu seemed to have recovered from his injuries, and there was a trace of spirit in his eyes. He couldn't help but say, "Sai, you're so stupid. I really don't know what to do with you. It's too boring to kill you directly." Li Zongjio really couldn't do it. What was the difference between this and killing a pig? "You can go. Where's your father?" "I won't kill him for now. Didn't you say that you have hundreds of heavenly masters? Call them all over." Li Zongjio suddenly wanted to play. Since this kid was so confident, how could Li Zongjio not let him feel his own strength? If he directly killed him now, how boring would that be? "What did you say? Are you courting death?" Shen Wu was immediately angry. What did this kid mean by saying such words? "You don't understand?" Li Zongjio flicked his finger, and a wave of energy instantly broke one of Shen Wu's legs. Bang! Blood splattered, and flesh was badly mutilated. One of his legs was blown off. Shen Wu didn't even have time to react as his body fell to the ground. It took him a few seconds to realize what had happened to his body. "My leg! I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" Shen Wu's face was covered in blood, his veins bulging. Blood splattered from their mouths. There were flames of anger in his eyes, but what he felt more was the pain of having his leg broken. His leg had been directly blown off. How much pain had the latter suffered? He wished he could tear Li Zongjio into pieces. "I'm worried that the king of the Great Wu Empire won't believe your words, so you can bring your father's hand back with you," Li Zongjio said as he removed one of Shen Tianliu's hands. He threw it to Shen Wu. The dignified guardian duke of the Great Wu dynasty had his arm ripped off just like that. Shen Tianliu, who was unconscious, seemed to feel the pain coming from his body. His body immediately trembled, but he never woke up. Well, just you wait." Shen Wu held Shen Tianliu's broken arm and stared at Li Zongjio with eyes full of death. After memorizing Li Zongjio's face, he turned around angrily. "Not only the fallen city, but also your countries will be reduced to ruins. Scorched earth." Shen Wu threatened Jiangbai at the same time. "Hey!" Suddenly, a voice called out to Shen Wu. Chu Yingguan appeared in front of Shen Wu with a dagger in his hand. Then, he stabbed the dagger in his hand into Shen Wu's chest. "I'm returning this to you." Chu Yingguan was quite ruthless when he attacked. It could be said that Shen Wu had never expected this dagger to stab down. Before he left, he was stabbed with a dagger. Bitch, just you wait. Shen Wu did not dare to stay any longer. He memorized Chu Yingguan's face. After he went back and found reinforcements, he would settle the score with these people. He did not even plan to save Yu Luo, who was seriously injured and fell to the side. The most important thing now was to escape as soon as possible. Otherwise, if he continued to stay here, he would definitely be treated more harshly. These women might even stab him again. Shen Wu was an expert of the primitive emperor realm, but he did not dare to face these crazy women. The only right thing to do was to escape first. Even in Shen Wu's heart, if he left quickly now, it would be to save his father. He did not want to escape at the last minute. Therefore, with this thought, Shen Wu ran faster and faster. What Shen Wu was piloting was also a type of flying boat. It quickly flew in the direction of the Great Wu dynasty. After Shen Wu left, Li Zongjiu also twisted Shen Tianliu's head. He threw Shen Tianliu's body aside. He did not want to keep this person alive. Jiang Bai glanced at Shen Tianliu's head. Jiang Bai was very clear about this person's identity. After all, this person was the Duke guarding Duke of the Great Wu dynasty, the leader of the Great Wu dynasty's heavenly masters. The leader of many heavenly masters had fallen to such a state. Senior, the Great Wu dynasty's strength is not simple. Don't worry. No matter what dynasty comes, I will finish him. Li Zongjiu waved his hand disdainfully. Now that Li Zongjiu's strength had broken through to such a realm, it could be said that he was fearless. In the end, the sacred martial realm had fallen to its current state. These so-called great nations were basically all responsible for it. They had done nothing in compromise for the greater good. The only one who had a backbone was also killed by these people. Therefore, Li Zongjiu did not mind dealing with these disappointing people. Li Zongjiu naturally couldn't care so much about things like harming the common people. However, Li Zongjiu felt unhappy and wanted to come out and take care of it. Evil Lord's temper was like this. Therefore, Jiang Bai and Chu Yingguan could not figure out what Li Zongjiu meant. However, Li Zongjiu did not intend to explain to them. When the two girls reached his strength and realm, they would naturally understand. There was no need to ask so many questions. Basically, they could do whatever they wanted. Li Zongjiu then continued to nurture the unparalleled sword. Huo Wushuang had been fighting continuously recently, and could be said to have recovered with great difficulty. In the end, such a consumption occurred. If this continued, it would be a great loss for Huo Wushuang. Therefore, Li Zongjiu also kept the unparalleled sword in his blazing hell. It would take a long time to nurture it. On the other hand, Jiang Bai and Chu Yingguan were worried. With the strength of the Great Wu dynasty, they will definitely reach the city in less than 2 days. It's good that they're here. I'm going to kill this group of cowards with my own hands. Chu Yingguan hated these people. He could not wait to kill them directly, but he was annoyed because he was not as strong as Li Zongjiu. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.